Uh, ce? Să nu-mi fie rușine de ce veniți așa pe nepusă masă? Da, păi, miss, let me just, vreau să-mi dau pe mut stream-ul care e pe fucking direct pe telefon. Da, vin așa pe nepusă masă pentru că I just saw some shit pe Facebook and I can't, Facebook, da, pe Insta, and I can't just leave this out there, so m-am trezit așa cu fața la cerșaf și am zis, hey, people are shit, so how about we talk about it? E chestia că am văzut o grămadă de oameni care rightfully so, I mean, nu pot acum să vin eu să fiu mare how should I put it? Nu pot să vin eu să fiu gică contra acum în orice și pur și simplu să, you know, să le zic oamenilor că, bă, don't enjoy ziua copilului and shit like that. But to me, it's incredible faptul că gen uităm atât de ușor de unele lucruri care se întâmplă în zilele astea, încât mie mi se pare insane. Like, how can you even enjoy a fucking Child's Day când te uiți la știri și vezi cum decapitați copiii acolo? To me, it's incredible. Eu trebuie să merg la cumpărături și nu știu cât de mult o să posta pe stream. I don't have the, cum să zic, the freaking asta, pretenția să stai 100 de ani. It's fine. Do your stuff. It doesn't matter. It's okay. God damn. Okay. Let's see. Aveam aici un crash course pe care vreau să-l...
Hi, I'm John.
Jesus Christ. Nice. Pe care vreau să-l pun aici. It's not necessarily the best thing. Discutăm de pe Discord. Yes. Nu o să ținem mult stream-ul ăsta. Undeva până pe la ora 3, maxim 4. But it's something that I needed to post out there. Și să fie pur și simplu because e 1 iunie și pentru că efectiv mi se pare puțin de... Să vezi imagini cu copii care efectiv suferă și... Nu doar că suferă, dar they're even called suffering, they are tortured, they are killed în Gaza. Și noi să ieșim frumos la plimbare în soare and whatever. I'm not saying we shouldn't do that, pentru că până la urmă I shouldn't stay at home and not enjoy life just because, you know, dar în același timp we need to acknowledge something și trebuie să ne dăm seama că sunt unele chestii pe globul ăsta care they are not fine, right? So I'm holding this stream just because of that, in memoriam, să zicem, la toți copiii care nu mai sunt. Mă rog, I'm not the most qualified person to talk about this subject, pentru că, na, deși știu destul de multe în legătură cu ce se întâmplă acolo și istoria de acolo, I still don't feel like I know enough. Și asta nu e recorder talks, este... Stream de 1 iunie. Tralala. Nu o să pun mai mult aici pentru că who knows what Twitch is trying to do. Asta cu Romania loves abstaining. Punem aici titlul videoului când îl dăm. Oh, Jesus Christ, what the f... L-am făcut pe ăsta enorm. Wey, mai mic, brother. Mai mic. There you go. Așa. Pun și linkurile pe aici ca să fie. Manually unpin. Good. Now that we have this in. What else do I need to put, deci crash course-ul ăsta, cam frame, game browser, there we go, that's what I wanted. Oh shit, ăsta e prea sus. I just realized. Excuse me for the inconvenience. I didn't prepare that much for this. Doar ne uităm la niște chestii just so we see a bigger picture of the conflict, pentru că I feel like we don't understand the history behind it. Și de aia pur și simplu vreau să avem acest mic stream în legătură cu asta. So let's go. O să ne uităm la mai multe videouri. Și la reportaje, we will read news, we will see what's going on. Have a moment to think that not all the kids can enjoy or can be alive to enjoy what's happening today over the world. Ziua copilului.
Of course, world history, and today we're going to talk about Israel and Palestine, hopefully without a flame war. Yeah, big ask, Mr. Green. I mean, that fight goes back thousands and thousands of years. Except thousands of years ago, there wasn't an Islam yet, so yeah, no. Also, let me submit that very little of this conflict between Israel and Palestine over the last several decades has been about, like, theological differences between Islam and Judaism. No one's arguing about whether the most important prophets descended from Abraham's son Isaac or his son Ishmael, right? It's not about whether to fast during Yom Kippur or Ramadan. It's about land. Portraying the conflict as eternal or as religious makes it feel intractable in a way that, frankly, it isn't. So instead, let's begin, as most historians do, in the late 19th century. And instead of talking about religion, let's follow the lead of historians like James Gelvin and discuss
Asta cred că o să înceapă în 1888.
competing
1880. I'm guessing. Otherwise...
Okay, so in the late 19th century, the Ottoman Empire ruled over what we now know as Palestine. The population there, according to Ottoman records from...
What do the Palestinians say about this? Gen, eu sunt curios, pentru că mulți zic, am văzut chestia asta, like, and stuff. I'm really curious to see what they're saying. Dați-mi voie să-mi adaug un tab aici pe furiș ca să fac un research. In the meantime, în timp ce el vorbește.
1878 was 87% Muslim, 10% Christian, and 3% Jewish. Everybody spoke Arabic as the daily language, and in Jerusalem, the religious populations were roughly equal. To give you a sense of life in Ottoman Palestine, an Arab Orthodox Christian musician named Wasif Jaharia grew up in Jerusalem in the first decade of the 20th century, learning the Quran in school and celebrating both Passover and Eid with his Jewish and Muslim neighbors. Ottoman Palestine was, in short, a place in which people of different religious faiths lived peacefully together. All right, let's go to the thought bubble. The late 19th century was the golden age of nationalism in Europe, and no place was crazier than the Habsburg Austro-Hungarian Empire, in which at least 10 different nations all wanted their own state. And in that hyper-nationalistic empire lived a Jewish journalist named Theodor Herzl, who had hoped that Jews could assimilate into European nations, but soon became convinced that the Jewish people needed to leave Europe and settle in their own state. The concept of Jewish nationalism came to be known as Zionism. Zionism. It's important to keep in mind that most Zionists were secular Jews, so they imagined Israel as a state for Jews more than a Jewish state. In 1917, the British government, hoping to gain the support of Jewish people, issued the Balfour Declaration, promising, quote, the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. A bold promise considering that Palestine was still technically Ottoman, as they hadn't yet lost World War I. Of course, they would soon, but it turned out that the British were over-promisers when it came to Palestine, because a year before the Balfour Declaration, the British had secretly promised the French that they would divide up the Arab territories and the Brits would keep Palestine. Furthermore, in 1915, other British officials had promised the ruler of Mecca, Sharif Hussein, that he would rule over an Arab state, including Palestine, if he led an Arab revolt against Ottoman rule, which Hussein promptly did. So basically, the Brits had promised Palestine to the Meccans, to themselves, and to the Zionists.
Bro, if I colonial,
What could go wrong? Thanks, Thought Bubble. So shortly after the end of the war, the British established a colony in Palestine with the idea that they'd rule until the Palestinians were ready to govern themselves. At which point the people living in Palestine were like, well, now seems good. And the British were like, yeah, but maybe not just yet. Meanwhile, the British established separate institutions for Christians, Jews, and Muslims, making it difficult for Palestinian Christians and Muslims to cooperate and easier for the British to, quote, divide and rule the inhabitants of Palestine. Again, what could go wrong? Meanwhile, the British did attempt to honor the Balfour Declaration's promise to, quote, facilitate Jewish immigration under suitable conditions. Between 1920 and 1939, the Jewish population of Palestine increased by over 320,000 people. In fact, by 1938, Jews were just under 30% of the population of Palestine. And the growing Jewish population focused on purchasing land from
George Ropotă, thank you for the follow. You are being welcomed by CTP on this channel, by the way. Ciao. Și bine am venit la o zi dedicată războiului în timpul zilei copilului. Războiului, genocidului, că that's not a war. Ne uităm să vedem acum ce s-a întâmplat, când s-a întâmplat. Nu o iau pe domnul ăsta de la Crash Course ca de ultimate source of information, pentru că îmi dau seama că there might be some other influences in any other source of information. O să încercăm să ne uităm și la the Palestinian side of it, Al Jazeera și alte chestii de genul ăsta. Dar eu sunt curios de sursele lui, că el n-are comentariile activate aici for various reasons, pentru că efectiv it would explode. Da. Ce mai nevăză e că it's not... I can't find the sources. Okay, they have a crash course on it, but still. Dar mai cât reușești, no worries, don't, it's fine. Gen, mai avem aici adminul care zicea mai devreme, adminul, Jesus, moderatorul care spunea că she has to do some stuff. So don't worry about it. But thanks for joining și thanks for the follow, ești al 25-lea, so much appreciated.
Absentee non-Palestinian Arab landowners and then evicting Palestinian farmers who were living and working there. By controlling both the land and the labor, they hoped to establish a more secure community within Palestine. But of course, these practices heightened tensions between Jewish people and Arab Palestinians during the 1920s and 1930s. Along the way, Palestinian Arabs began to think of themselves as the Palestinian nation, and that growing sense of nationalism erupted in 1936 when the Palestinians revolted against the British. With the help
Is it nationalism dacă te revolți împotriva unui fucking pur și simplu a venit și ți-o luat? Anyway.
Help of Jewish militias, the British brutally suppressed the Palestinian revolt, but in the aftermath, the British issued a
They were destroyed in 1936 și efectiv după au venit. Ok. Deci the British, the Palestinian land to the fucking Ottomans, Jesus Christ, to the fucking Saudis, gen Arabs din peninsula Saudi, să zicem așa, to the Zionists, adică la așa, și to themselves, gen, ori zis, da, we will rule them until they are free, until they're able to govern themselves. govern themselves. La Zionists l-au zis la fel. We're giving them to you because you know, we're giving you a state. Și la arabi la care l-au zis, yeah, sure. If you revolt against the Ottomans and you help us win the war, you'll have this. By the way. Dar nu cred că ei nu cred că comunicau pe atunci. Cred că erau gen, da mă, lejer. Și după aia, știi, trimiteau mesagerii prin fucking whatever radio ass they had back then. Și cred că au ajuns la cu calul mai mai târziu. Și a fost gen, stai, voi ați vorbit deja cu otomanii și cu otomanii. N-ai tot zic otomanii, nu sunt otomanii, au vorbit cu this, where is it, with this guy. With this guy, with the rule over Arab state, including Palestine Arab revolt. Eu vorbit cu băiatul ăsta și a zis, bă, îți dăm asta, right? Anyway.
Between Jewish people and Arab Palestinians during the 1920s and 1930s. Along the way, Palestinian Arabs began to think of themselves as the Palestinian nation, and that growing sense of nationalism erupted in 1936 when the Palestinians revolted against the British. With the help of Jewish militias, the British brutally suppressed the Palestinian revolt, but in the aftermath, the British issued a white paper limiting Jewish immigration to Palestine and calling for the establishment of a joint...
Limiting Jewish immigration to Palestine and calling for the establishment of a joint Arab and Jewish state in 10 years. So a two-state solution a fost atunci?
Joint Arab and Jewish state in Palestine within 10 years. This managed to leave no one happy. The Zionists were angry at Britain for limiting Jewish immigration at a time when Jews particularly needed to leave Europe, and the Arab Palestinians were unhappy about the prospect of waiting 10 years for a state. And then came World War II, which was actually quite a peaceful time in Palestine. But then it ended and tensions resumed, and the British realized that colonies like Palestine were far more trouble than they were worth, so they handed the issue of Palestine over to the newly created United Nations. They were like, oh, hey there, United Nations, for your first problem.
Yeah, as they did back then. Ce mi se pare insane, eu am avut la un moment dat o teorie când eram la licență, am venit cu la o materie. How to predict wars. Și venise cu teoria gâlcii. I don't know what that was on about. Nu știu ce băusem. I'm joking, nu băusem nimic, dar eram pur și simplu pe o... Bă, dar ce... Mi se pare așa un pattern foarte weird când mă uitam la hartă. Și... Obviously, nu știu dacă poți neapărat să judeci chestia asta bazată pe țări and how they attack each other. Dar mă uitam așa la hartă și văzusem cronologic vorbind. Nu luasem de la anul 0, Domini, whatever, când începuseră războaiele pentru prima dată. Mă uitam pur și simplu așa in recent modern history cu World War I and stuff. Și cu proxy wars care se întâmplau atunci. Și zicea, ok, închei războiul din Europa, pui mâna pe el ca și când it's done. Toată tensiunea care e de acolo, it has to go somewhere. It will go somewhere else. Știi ca o gâlcă într-o minge de fotbal. Șutezi prea mult într-o parte, se deschide o gâlcă. Atunci nu mai știu care era logica din spatele chestia asta, dar pur și simplu era gen... Se umflă o parte, se dezumflă, se umflă în altă parte. So it's not... You can't... Gen... If the ball is fucked... Planeta, adică... If the ball is fucked, you can't 100% fix it. You have to change the cauciucul ăla din... Which, no, it's the society in this point. I guess that would be it. Și atunci, practic, dacă primul război mondial s-a terminat, toate chestiile s-au dus în altă parte și tensiunile și atenția s-a dus în altă parte, like, you know, the aftermath and everything like that went somewhere else. Toată atenția care s-a dus aici, după aia când a venit al doilea război mondial, because stuff happened in Europe, drove the attention from this to there, because obviously you have to defend yourself. Și aici nu era la fel de tensionat and all that, compared to what Europe used to be. But then, din nou, când s-au terminat lucrurile de acolo, s-au pus mâna, s-au cum zic, s-o astupat gălca aia, s-o cusut mingea în zona aia și o ieșit pe altă parte. Like, in this case here. Și cam asta era teoria mea, că gen, no matter what happens, dacă you take control of a conflictual situation într-o parte, there will always be something, nu știu dacă asta era deja o teorie sau dacă am venit eu cu asta, but there was always gonna be something else sprouting somewhere around the world care să existe în ciuda faptului că the first conflict that came in was the conflict that derived all other conflicts care urma să se întâmple cu el, pentru că humans, ne place să ne dăm cu părerea.
So in November of 1947, the United Nations voted to partition Palestine into separate Palestinian and Jewish states.
In November 1947, the United Nations voted to partition Palestine into separate Palestinian and Jewish states. I don't know based on what. To me, this seems logical, nu la modul de logical că au făcut asta. Partițiunea pe care au făcut-o, it's not linear as the British did in Sykes-Picot, în care s-au dus în țările astea și au început să tragă linii așa, scuze, să tragă linii pur și simplu stânga-dreapta based on whatever. Cât le convenea lor acolo, like, stânga, dreapta, sus, jos, bla bla bla. Și ne ținând cont de minoritățile etnice care erau în partea aia, combinând, gen, imaginați-vă un cartier tăiat în două de așa, brusc, ăștia care nu se suportau trebuie să trăiască împreună. They didn't care about that. Aici pare că totuși they did, pentru că altfel nu-mi dau seama de ce ar fi făcut separația în felul ăsta and not how the British did it, pentru că și the British were like pătrat.
The partition plan called for two states roughly equal in size, but the borders looked like a jigsaw puzzle. I mean, you do not look at this map and think, yeah, that's gonna work, sure enough.
No, I'm not looking at this map and I think, yeah, that's gonna work, pentru că, obviously, sunt separate astea. I guess they were separate because, this is my guess, not whatever happened, că nu știu. It would be that it's because there were more people from one nation sau one nationality in that side și more people from the other nationality in that side și atunci probabil de aia le-au tras așa, otherwise no clue.
A jigsaw puzzle. I mean, you do not look at this map and think, yeah, that's gonna work. Sure enough, it didn't. And soon after the plan was announced, the cleverly named 1948 Arab-Israeli War broke out with Israel on the one side and the Palestinians and many Arab states on the other. The Israelis won, and when an armistice was signed in 1949, Israel occupied a third more land than they would have had under the UN proposal. Meanwhile,
A third more? Israel occupied a third more land.
Israel occupied a third more land than they would have had under the UN proposal. Meanwhile, Jordan controlled and later annexed the West Bank and the Old City of Jerusalem, and Egypt controlled the Gaza Strip. Over 700,000 Palestinians fled their homes and became refugees in the surrounding Arab countries. And to Israelis, this war was the beginning of their nation. To the Palestinians, it was the Nabka, the catastrophe, as they became stateless. To the Palestinians, it was the Nabka, the catastrophe, as they became stateless.
What the fuck? Why are people still saying că ăsta a început din October 7th și din ce ăștia, dude? No fucking way. Și even October 7th, stop defending that shit. Stop saying it's because of them. It doesn't justify, doesn't matter. Yo, I'm condemning every whatever violent killing, doesn't matter din partea cui, doesn't matter who. I don't stand these. Mie pur și simplu nu pot să fiu de acord. Dar judging by this is 48. Eu știam chestia asta, știam că gen din 48 erau it was lost. Dar pur și simplu imagine să fie acolo. The Brits get you in. They say, rule over this. până you manage to rule yourself. We're gonna help you, blah blah blah, the colonial shit that they were into. Noi vă ajutăm să nu știu ce. Have this land. Și după ce? După vine United Nations, the UN with a fucking horrific map, care apparently didn't make sense. Cum mă gândeam eu că maybe they had some brain when they used that. No, they didn't. Așa, apoi vine războiul care efectiv, cred că the Israelis did not see that as a good thing for them. Gen, I can't see why. Gen, the Palestinians, cum zicea și el, trebuia să aștepte 10 ani for a state în mai înainte. And now they had this. Și după, asta a fost după al doilea război mondial, right? So, imagine toate nebunile alea care s-au întâmplat în Europa, and then you just decide to, by the way, what the fuck is happening in Palestine? Don't you think we forgot about you? We're coming! And you're gonna have your state. Și după efectiv le-a dat căcatul ăla, and now they're having a war. Israelis obviously won pentru că support from Britain. They're not gonna... What? Nu o să dea britanicii arme la palestinieni. They're not gonna do that. Palestinienii pur și simplu erau oamenii care erau acolo, gen about to be governed by either Zionists, by either British, or by either the Arab care erau Saudi de acum, gen. Respectiv Emiratele. So they had no choice of ruling over themselves. Gen, ei pur și simplu were like threw in there, just like, oh, bad luck you were born here, by the way. Your land is gonna be either to the Zionists, either to us, or either to the Arab, whatever other state. You're not gonna have your own land, but you're gonna be under great control. Don't worry about that. We're gonna take good care of you. No. Și după aia a avut război, and as you can see over, pentru că israelii, clar, au fost susținuți de britanici, de whatever Americans, whatever else there was in there. Palestinienii singuri, fără ajutor din partea nimănui, maybe Jordan, maybe Egypt, but even that, no, I don't think that was the case. They couldn't do shit. Obviously they couldn't do shit pentru că they couldn't develop themselves, and probably this was another massacre care over zic probably pentru că I didn't read into it și nu m-am uitat, and I don't want to say stupid shit. Da, cum zice el, to the Palestinians it was Nakba, okay, sorry. Nakba, the catastrophe as they became stateless. Again! They didn't have a state of their own at first, and now they don't have it again, because they lost the war to these assholes.
Over the next 18 years, nothing changed territorially, and then in 1967, Israel and several Arab states went to war again. It was called the 6 Days War because, get this, it lasted 6 days. Israel won and then gained control over the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, the Sinai Peninsula, and the Golan Heights. So
and let me think. Netanyahu a văzut harta asta și a zis, that is crazy. We need this back. La fel cum a făcut și Putin. S-a uitat la fosta harta statelor satelit din Uniunea Sovietică și a zis, yo, that is crazy. By the way, Ukraine was ours. And brusc started to fucking attack. Now, in my opinion, conflictul din Ucraina doesn't compare to this. I'm not saying Ukraine is not to be supported, but right now my attention is fully here. În legătură cu Ucraina, you've seen reports and you see reports of them saying, here's our weapons, but don't go too far. What? So we're meant to stay there and just accept being bombed? Because you don't want to ruin your relationships with Russia or with Putin? You don't want to risk a world war because my state is under what? Imagine being so privileged ca americani sau ca europeni sau ca whatever, încât să te uiți la un mesaj să zici, we're gonna help you, but just don't overdo it because we don't want to destroy the, you know, we don't want us to be involved. But here's the weapons, by the way. How this is complicated as shit. Și aici eu am impresia că asta s-a întâmplat. Netanyahu a văzut chestia asta și a zis I want to smoke this. This is what needs to happen. Și după aia a băgat bullshit-ul ăla cu atacul din 7 octombrie, care, by the way, they financed. From what I've read, they financed. Soto. Deci am impresia că se întâmplă atât de multe căcaturi încât ai impresia, gen, you get so paranoid. Te uiți la ăștia, la Hamas, care efectiv s-au dus la humus, scuze, vreau să zic humus, Twitch, sorry, nu. Așa. Care pur și simplu au avut bani să dea niște rachete sau whatever, bombe în ăsta către Israel și Israel pur și simplu they have like the best defense because the US helped them, considering the fact că sunt în mijloc acolo între Arab nations și the US thought that they're gonna get absolutely battered if you don't do something. Așa. Și au cea mai bună apărare militară, cei mai bine antrenați soldați din lume pe apărare, pe atac now, obviously. And also they have the latest technology. Și they clearly defended that well. I'm not saying they didn't cause any damage. I'm saying they did defend that very well compared to how Gaza is defending itself now. Și nu pot să, like, come on. Dai vina pe chestia aia and now you go in and do this. Deci e clar, deci mi se pare atât de vizibil faptul că a fost un pretext chestia aia și aia vreau să zic că probably they financed how humus au venit și au început să atace brusc pe 7 and people say, and it's justified să zici că ok, based on the fact that you've been torturing our people și us for so many years, mai aruncând și o bombă pe aici pe acolo din când în când, why shouldn't we try to like say something? How do you want me to just take this situation? You are a woman in Gaza, you give birth to a child, you get bombed for generations and generations and generations. Aren't you fed of it? Jumbo, can you shut up? Like, can you let me live? Oamenii ăștia au fost gen ca într-o fucking pușcărie acolo. They've been treated so bad încât pur și simplu at some point they were like, you know what? Alright, we'll live like this, fuck it. If that means I can live, at least, please let me live. And they didn't let them live. That is crazy. Mi se pare extraordinar de, nu știu, golănesc și pur masacru ce fac ăștia în fucking Israel right now. It is absolutely terrible. Și mă uit și văd, and it's horrifying how they are deleting their own history. Erasing it așa, gen. Pe lângă că și eu au suferit chestia, they suffered the Holocaust, they suffered a lot. Let's not get into that, because it's like very, it's not about them now, it's about Palestina. Și mi se pare insane. So yeah, clearly, mi se pare că e ceva ce vrea Netanyahu să achieve. He's not gonna stop here. If he destroys the Palestinian state, if he destroys Gaza, if he destroys West Bank, merge mai sus, cum arată acolo, la Golan Heights. După aia o să zică ce? Peninsula Sinai, you know what? In our biblical whatever book that is, the Sinai Peninsula is mentioned, so it's ours. Right?
The 1947 proposal looked like this. By 1967, things looked like this. Then the UN passed Resolution 242. Man, they are good at naming resolutions, which outlined a basic framework for achieving peace, including Israel withdrawing from the territory acquired in the war, and all participants recognizing the rights of both a Palestinian and an Israeli state to exist.
Of course it did not happen. Chiar mă gândeam. Do they? Because in Europe, it doesn't.
This, of course, did not happen. After the war, the broader Israeli-Arab conflict morphed into a more specific Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And this is a nice moment to note that not all Muslims are Arabs, not all Arabs are Palestinians, and not all Palestinians are Muslims.
After the war, the broader Israeli-Arab conflict morphed into a more specific Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And this is a nice moment to note all Muslims are Arabs. Not all Arabs are Palestinians, and not all Palestinians are Muslims.
Like there's a significant Christian minority of Palestinians, for instance. Palestinian is a word used to describe the ethnic identity of those who have historically lived in Palestine. There were, for instance, lots of Christians in the Palestinian Liberation Organization, or PLO, formed in 1964 and led by Yasser Arafat. The PLO oversaw guerrilla groups that attacked civilians, but also used non-violent approaches to try to achieve a Palestinian state. And meanwhile, the Israeli government began to establish Jewish settlements in what had been Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem, the West Bank, and the Gaza Strip. There are now over 3 territories, while the Israeli government began to establish Jewish settlements.
That fucking Israeli flag.
In what had been Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem, the West Bank, and the Gaza Strip. There are now over 350,000 Jewish settlers in the West Bank and over 200,000 in East Jerusalem. And these settlements are illegal according to international law, but Israel counters by saying that they aren't really illegal because Palestine isn't really a state.
How about you fuck off? Who are you to say that? Isn't a state because what? Because you don't like.
By the late 1980s, Palestinians launched the first intifada, which literally means shaking off. And this began with like boycotts of Israeli products and services and refusing to pay Israeli taxes.
Wow. So radical. Oh my god. How can you not pay our taxes? How the fuck your taxes?
But when the Israeli armed forces cracked down on protesters, violence ensued. And the first intifada also saw the founding of Hamas, which launched the first suicide bombing against Israel in 1993.
And also suicide bombs.
Hamas gained support partly because of its militancy, but mostly because of its social welfare projects in Gaza. It built and staffed schools, mosques, and clinics. The most important legacy of the first intifada was the emergence of peace talks between Palestinians and
the peace talks. How? Oh my god, bro.
Israelis. This led to the Oslo Accords and a peace process based on our old friend United Nations Security Council Resolution 242. But there were a lot of issues to resolve. I mean, putting aside the question of like how to make 2 states that don't look like a jigsaw puzzle, there was the question of the Jewish settlement and the right for Palestinian refugees and their descendants to return to Palestine, water rights, which are a big deal in that part of the world, and so on. It's very complicated. So then came the Clinton talk. So it's time for the open letter. But first, let's see what's inside of the globe. Oh, look, it's a collection of philandering American presidents. An open letter to Bill Clinton. Hey, Bill, so your talks probably came closer than any other time in recent history to an actual peace deal between the Israelis and the Palestinians. Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak was willing to give up more land currently claimed by
Israeli Prime Minister, Israelian Ehud Barak was willing to give up more land currently claimed by Israeli than any other time in the past.
Israel than at any time in the past. Even Yasser Arafat was surprised. Although not all the questions got addressed, you were definitely closing in on something. But in the end, it didn't happen. And since then, not to criticize you, things have gotten kind of worse and worse and worse. Worst of all, that was your big legacy moment. Now all you've got is the conflict in Northern Ireland getting resolved while you were president. In short, it could have been amazing, but instead it was kind of meh. Kind of like your presidency, actually. At least you'll always have those vodka-soaked hugs with Boris Yeltsin to look back on. Best wishes, John Green. So the Clinton talks failed, Ehud Barak's government was undermined, and then in September of 2000, Prime Minister candidate Ariel Sharon led a group of 1,000 armed guards to the Temple Mount in the old city of Jerusalem.
Hysterical. He could never settle on where to put his settlements. Oh wow.
Jerusalem. To Muslims, this is known as the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and it's the 3rd holiest site in Islam, behind only the Kaaba in Mecca and the Prophet's Mosque in Medina. And it's the holiest site in Judaism, so in short, it's a pretty touchy place to march to with 1,000 armed guards. So the event sparked a massive protest, which eventually led to the much more violent Second Intifada, in which more than 3,000 Palestinians...
Wait, let me get this straight.
In September... John Green. So the Clinton talks failed, Ehud Barak's government was undermined, and then in September of 2000, Prime Minister candidate Ariel Sharon...
Israeli.
led a group of 1,000...
So he led a group of mere armed guards to the Temple Mount of the old city of Jerusalem. Of Armata.
And armed guards to the Temple Mount in the old city of Jerusalem. To Muslims, this is known as the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and it's
The Al-Aqsa Mosque, and it's the third holiest site in Islam, behind only the Kaaba in Mecca and the Prophet's Mosque in Medina. Să vii cu 1000 de oameni la your... Pe lângă faptul că ăștia nu prea au, gen palestinienii mă refer, nu prea au where to go and how to do stuff, gen how they can't move properly, they can't do anything because they're being judged because they're Muslim, because they had terrorist attacks. Dar oamenii se uită doar la terrorist attacks. They don't look behind it. Don't look at the actual historical conflict behind, besides that. Gen, pur și simplu se uită la acting now, știi? Gen, we're living in the present times. Și avem impresia că noi suntem în centrul universului și că realitatea noastră care s-a întâmplat acum e mult mai importantă decât ce s-a întâmplat în anterior. Let me tell you something. Knowing about your past doesn't make you an asshole. Dimpotrivă, if you know about your past, you can learn to not repeat it. La noi, efectiv, se repetă de atât de multe ori acest ciclu continuu de violență just because we don't care about what happened in the past. Și pur și simplu, bă, uită-te mă să vezi de la ce societatea aia. What's the problem? Hai să nu mai facem greșelile pe care le-au făcut aia. Let's just probably think it otherwise. Hai să găsim, nu știu, soluția A, B, C, X, Y. I don't care. But let's not do what they did, because it clearly sucks. Și clar ăștia n-aveau nicio treabă cu fucking peace talks, the Israelis. I mean, they just wanted more land. How can you go there? These people can't live normally. They have 3 places they can go to so they can pray, like they have the sacred places. 3 places on the whole planet. Whatever. You get it. They have that. And you decide to march in with soldiers? What the fuck are you doing?
the third holiest site in Islam, behind only the Kaaba in Mecca and the Prophet's Mosque in Medina. And it's the holiest site in Judaism, so in short, it's a pretty touchy place to march to with 1,000 armed guards. So the event sparked a massive protest, which eventually led to the much more violent Second Intifada, in which more than 3,000 Palestinians and 1,000 Israelis were eventually killed.
Another Intifada, deci pe lângă palestinienii, they want to spread them as they die, so their population gets is because they want to like tell them to stop doing what they're doing, because deci tu încerci să le zici asta, bă, stop, please, we want to just fuck off. Nu mai ai motiv, nu mai ai metode prin care să le transmiți astora, can you listen to us? You resort to these kind of things, because trimiți suicide bombers and you nu le mai plătești taxele, nu mai cumperi de la ei, nu mai faci ce vor ei, nu mai gata. What? It's no. Fuck out of here. Și tot ei mor mai mulți. It's insane. I'm not saying the Israelis should, like, innocent people should die, but it's insane to see că gen ei care protestează și care sunt acolo, they still have more deaths than the one that are actually retaliating against, which is, I don't know, maybe that's how it works, but still.
In 2002, the Israelis claiming to act in defense of civilians began construction of a...
In 2002, the Israelis claiming to act in defense of civilians. So it happened before that again. How many... Bro, asta e a 5-a oară, gen când se întâmplă, sau 6-a oară, and we still don't learn about it?
...wall around the West Bank. But instead of following the borders established after the 1967 war, the barrier was built to include many Israeli settlements on the Israeli side. To Israelis, that was about self-defense. To Palestinians, it was an illegal land grab. Then in 2005,
So it's about land, again.
Yasser Arafat died, and in an election shortly thereafter, Hamas won a majority of the parliamentary seats. Since then, Hamas and the Palestinian Authority have sort of divided how to govern Palestine, and it's also sort of been poorly governed. In the past 10 years, Hamas...
That normal că it's poorly governed, pentru că you can't really... Gen, they are probably... Să zic că Yasser Arafat, maybe he was one of the people that was actually still had ties to the powers, în afară de, I'm not talking about Israel, but the powers there, right? Și clar, Israeli didn't want him there, pentru că he was probably doing an okay job at governing whatever there is to be governed. I still don't understand how can they call that gen vii și îi dai o bucată de pământ și zicea you can go there, but we're also gonna bomb you. That's not how you offer somebody land. So after he died, Israel were like, oh, maybe it's time. Și zic asta pentru că Yasser Arafat maybe was one of the people that had, this is my theory by the way, it's not facts, but my theory is that he was actually one of the people that had ties cu the Western world, și n-ar fi bătut puțin la ochi pentru Israel să ducă și să-l distrugă pe ăsta. Now that Hamas is in, it's probably a terrorist group care pur și simplu terrorist, care one of the cei care se revoltau împotriva Israelului and stuff pentru chestiile pe care le făceau înainte. And right now they are in the government, pentru că there was no one left to govern. Adică what are you gonna do? Dacă era cineva care voia pur și simplu să și imaginez atunci. Imagine someone from the Palestinians came in as a politician, came in and said, I want to make peace with Israelis. După toate chestiile astea care s-au întâmplat with Israel and Palestine, dacă venea cineva să zică I want to make peace with Israelis, I would have fucking punched him in the face. Pentru că efectiv you can't, what do you mean peace? They have been bombing our land. They've been trying to kick us away. They've been trying to still grab our land and you still want to make peace? What the it's about peace. It's clear they don't want peace. They want war. So what would they do? Era clar, deci aici e 2005, right? This is 2005. Mă rog, videoclipul a fost făcut through 2015. Videoclipul ăsta a fost făcut cu 2015, right? Deci chiar v-aș putea zice mai mult de aproape 10 ani are videoclipul ăsta, right? So it's 10 years ago almost, în care gen stuff happened și în ăștia 10 ani. Dar până atunci, it's been 2005, deci sunt deja 20 de ani aproape de atunci de când ăștia au venit la putere. And it's still so obvious că aici urma să se ajungă. It's still so obvious to me. Like, this is 2005 și clar, ăștia sunt semne că, bă, ăștia voiau pur și simplu să they fucking wanted us to go away. They wanted us to leave the land, find somewhere else, I don't care. Probabil și dacă se duceau undeva unde erau, like, I don't know, peninsulă sau stuff, nu știu, o insulă în Oceanul Pacific, far away from other lands, în care să fie doar ei și cred că și acolo se ducea Netanyahu după ei. Like, it's so fucking stupid.
Has frequently launched rocket attacks into Israel. Israel has responded with extended and extremely violent invasions of Palestinian territory that have seen thousands of Palestinians killed, many of them militants, but also many not. Both parties claim to be responding to the provocations of the other, but much of the conflict reflects a consistent failure on all sides to understand the legitimacy of the other's narrative. To Palestine, the Palestinian people have been denied a state not just since the formation of Israel, but also for decades before that, and now they live under what amounts to a military occupation. And that's all true. To Israel, the Jewish people clearly need a homeland which the United Nations established. And they certainly aren't the first nation state to consolidate and increase their territory via military victory. And they need to protect their nation against the many active threats made against them by their neighbors. That's also true. It's important to understand the internal logic of these competing nationalist visions. For both Zionist and Palestinian national visions to eventually work, it's necessary to understand the right of each to exist and the legitimacy of each's historical narrative. But these problems aren't thousands of years old and they aren't intractable. They emerged in the British Mandatory period. But let's hope that by understanding that this isn't an endless religious war, that we might be closer to seeing its end. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week. Crash Course is filmed here in the Chad and Stacey Emicult studio in Indianapolis, and it's made possible by our subscribers on Subbable. So thank.
Da, păi it's coming to an end because guess what? Israelis want to eradicate the whole Palestinian thing. Anyway.
To fully understand the Israeli
Vocea asta de fucking AI. Do you have sources? Alright, let's see. Ne mai uităm la asta. Then we look at some news of what's happened recently, and then we maybe game a bit.
Palestinian conflict, I'll first briefly summarize the history of the Jews, first as it is taught in Israel, and then as it is generally established by historians. In Israel, the history of the Jews is mainly inspired by biblical texts. According to this account, the Hebrews were enslaved in Egypt. During their flight to Sinai, they received the Torah from God and a promised land in Canaan. After conquering it, the kingdom of David and Solomon was founded, and Solomon's temple was built in Jerusalem. The kingdom then split to form the kingdoms of Israel and Judah. But in the 6th century BC, the region was conquered by the Babylonians, who destroyed Solomon's temple and took the people into exile in Babylon.
See, I don't know how historically accurate this is because I didn't see the sources that this guy cites. It's just random ass animations. But if this is true, if this is true, then you have to look at it this way as well. If this is toate chestiile au, they have a root cause. A click that started or ignited a complete fire. Gen efectiv totul a pornit de la o chestie. In their case, it might be this. The Babylonia and whatever. And clack, and then whatever people survive from there, and they're gonna just retaliate against everything that was Babylonia and all that. So probably everything has an answer as long as you can find accurate detail in historical books and all that. Faza e că și astea sunt cât de cât gen cărțile istorice and all that shit. Toate am impresia că pot să fie biased to some extent și depinde și de cine l-a scris, right? Pentru că nu pot să spui că everything is portrayed exactly as it was. Că, na. It's just if a war is between two states, the aggressor will write history from their perspective, and the oppressed will, or aggressed will write the history according to how they felt it. It's normal.
50 years later, they were allowed to return to Jerusalem, where they built the Second Temple. In 70 AD and again in 132 AD, while the region was under Roman control, two major revolts were violently suppressed. Jerusalem was destroyed, and the Jews were expelled from Judea, condemned to live in exile far from their land. If we now rely solely on historical facts, confirmed notably by archaeological discoveries, in the 13th century BC, the new kingdom of Egypt dominates the region called Canaan. But the empire is weakened by the Hittites to the north and by the Philistines, sea peoples who settle on the coasts. Egypt gradually withdraws from the region, and the kingdoms of Israel and Judah appear, probably founded by local populations. In the 6th century BC, the Babylonians conquer the region, raze Jerusalem, and forcibly take the elite to Babylon. After conquest by the
let me get
Judah
straight.
BC, gradually with Philistine, their land held for Second Temple. In 70 AD and again in 132 AD, while the region was under Roman control, two major revolts were violently suppressed. Jerusalem was destroyed, and the Jews were expelled from Judea, condemned to live in exile far from their land. If we now rely solely on...
Maybe this was the moment when the idea of Zionism is rooted into. Când au fost dați afară de romani. Maybe. I'm just presuming here.
on historical facts, confirmed notably by archaeological discoveries. In the 13th century BC, the new kingdom of Egypt dominates the region called Canaan, but the empire is weakened by the Hittites to the north and by the Philistines, sea peoples who settle on the coasts. Egypt gradually withdraws from the region, and the kingdoms of Israel and Judah appear, probably founded by local populations. In the 6th century BC, the Babylonians conquer the region, raze Jerusalem, and forcibly take the elite to Babylon.
Again.
Raze Jerusalem and forcibly take the elite to Babylon. After conquest by the Persians, they are allowed to return to Jerusalem. The Second Temple is then built, and it is likely that the Torah is written during this period, based on ancient texts and orally transmitted stories. In 333 BC, Alexander the Great
That's me, boys.
conquers the region, which is then divided into Hellenistic dynasties. The Torah is then translated into Greek, which is spoken throughout the Eastern Mediterranean. After a Jewish revolt, the Hasmonean dynasty is founded, which conquers neighboring territories and converts the people there to Judaism.
Somewhere in this, răspunsul pentru toate atrocitățile și toate the way they think, am impresia că it lies somewhere in this period. Între, să vorbesc în termeni religioși, între 1400 înainte de Hristos sau înaintea erei noastre, let's say, anul 0, și 100, 0, respectiv anii 100-200, like in a span of 1,000 and something years, I think this is where things started to get going. Că și Torah, cum zic general acolo, a început să fie tradusă în greacă and started to be spoken around Europe. So everything there maybe started in this and you can't condemn them for being kicked out about someone, because it seems like this place is like cursed, dude. Everybody that's been living here has been kicked out at some point by someone else. But for no fucking reason. I mean, for obvious reasons of political. Eu zic no fucking reason, pentru că that's not a reason for me. Power and land is not enough for me. And you're there, you develop there, you don't. What, as long as the land near you is someone else's, why the fuck would I want to invade yours?
Hasmoneans are then conquered by the Romans, who in 70 AD suppress a major revolt in Jerusalem and destroy the Second Temple.
Da, știu, sunt idealist, okay? You don't need to destroy me.
In 132, another revolt is violently suppressed. Jerusalem is renamed Aelia Capitolina. Jews are banned from it, but they are not expelled from Judea, now called Syria Palestina. However, it is well established that by this time there are already many Jewish communities all around the Mediterranean basin, resulting from migrations and conversions.
Yeah, if you're gonna kick them out of the country, they're obviously gonna go somewhere else and form their own community. Asta se întâmplă și cu Arabia, asta se întâmplă și cu, spre exemplu, turcii acum în ziua de azi în Germania și vin, rightfully so, wanting to like maybe step away from whatever is happening in Turkey right now. Și ce se întâmplă și din Orientul Mijlociu cu like Syria, când a fost scuze. La fel, distrugerea masă acolo atunci în 2011-2012. They're gonna form communities, they're gonna grow communities, they're gonna wanna go back, maybe. Pentru că ei nu se simt ca acasă aici la noi. They are simply not. They're just not. Like, nu putem să le oferim ceva în așa fel încât ei să se simtă acasă. Și asta pentru că, na, există diferențe culturale, există whatever, but mainly because Europe is racist. It's as simple as that. Nu ești creștin, catolic, ortodox, whatever, if you're not Christian, o să fii văzut cu ochi răi. It's just like that. Și asta e valabil și pentru, de exemplu, sunt atât de religios, for example. Mă duc într-o țară, people are gonna ask me about marriage, people are gonna ask me about whatever. How about you go fuck yourself?
In the 4th century, Emperor Constantine converts to Christianity and spreads the religion throughout the empire.
Yeah, fuck you, Constantine, bro.
Jews are progressively marginalized.
So it's Christians, right? Everything started. The fucking Christians. Everything started with this. Bro, if you look at it from this perspective, nah, he's converted me, bro. He's converted me. I was always of the opinion that Christians are such assholes pentru că pur și simplu le credem mai superiori din punct de vedere religios decât everything else. And that's why I hated it, pentru că there was no other thing. Și la școală când mergeam și efectiv eram învățați că religie, materia. You speak about religion? Materia se numește religie, my guy. I'm nu religia creștin-ortodoxă. I'm supposed to learn more about other religions as well, ca să maybe choose what I want to believe in, if I want to believe in anything. Și atunci pur și simplu mi se pare idiotic. Dude, idiotic să te duci să te simți tu acum the fucking să le zici așa, like, oh, we are up here, they're down here, pentru că we're Christians, dude. Come on, it's Jesus, you know Jesus. Și pentru că faptul că it's been so marketed outside, like, holy shit. Mi se pare, bă, insane, man, insane. Cât de elitiști ne considerăm doar pentru că we are Christians. Just because someone came in and said, hey lads, I think this is cool, by the way, what do you think? Not what do you think, probabil nu eu lăsat să aleagă. There was like, this is what I think, this is what you should all think, by the way, this is the mainstream.
In the 7th century, during the Arab conquests, Jews and Christians in...
Oh, by the way, am uitat să schimb titlul aici. Oopsie daisy. Și linkul. My bad. Pin this. Oops. There we go.
The conquered territories are tolerated and allowed to practice their faith, provided they pay an additional tax.
What? This is also insane.
Jews are progressively marginalized. In the 7th century, during the Arab conquests, Jews and Christians in the conquered territories are tolerated and allowed to practice their faith, provided they pay an additional tax.
Poți să mergi lejer să te rogi la cine vrei tu, dar dacă nu e al nostru, 10 lei.
In the 8th century, the Khazar king Bulan and his elite convert to Judaism. In the Iberian Peninsula, after the Catholic Reconquista, a significant Jewish community called Sephardic must convert to Catholicism or leave the territory. Many go to the Maghreb and the Ottoman Empire, where they are tolerated. In Europe, starting from the period of the Crusades, Jews are regularly persecuted. Many take refuge in Poland, where they are well received and where they form what is called the Ashkenazi Jews. By the 18th century, there are about 1 million Jews in the world. Most live in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, but the country is threatened by its powerful neighbors, Russia, Prussia, and Austria. Between 1772 and 1795, Poland-Lithuania is entirely partitioned among its 3 neighbors. The majority of Jews now find themselves in Russia, where they are tolerated but heavily controlled. In 1881, following the assassination of Tsar Alexander II, his son and heir Alexander III ascends to the throne and begins to implement authoritarian and repressive policies targeting Jews in particular. As a result, about 100 pogroms, meaning violent and often deadly attacks against Jews, break out across the country with no reaction from the state. Many Jews then flee to the United States and Western Europe, but some consider migrating to Palestine. There they form the group, the Lovers of Zion, Zion being a hill in Jerusalem. At that time, about 25,000
So they were like kicked everywhere they went on the globe. Nobody wants. And then they were like, you know what, fuck it. If the world doesn't want us, we don't want the world.
Jews, mainly Sephardic, live in the major cities of the Ottoman Empire, close to the holy places of Judaism. They form what is called the Old Yeshuv. From 1882, the new migrants, mainly Ashkenazi Jews from Europe, form the new Yeshuv. They arrive in waves of migrations called aliyahs. However, the vast majority of Jews fleeing the pogroms in Russia prefer to go to the United States, the United Kingdom, and France. In France, Alfred Dreyfus, a Jewish captain, is falsely accused of providing secret information to the Germans. The affair gains prominence as anti-Semitism rises in the country. In 1895, Dreyfus is publicly cashiered in Paris. Among the crowd is Theodor Herzl, an Austrian Jewish journalist. The following year, the latter publishes a book in which he unites Jews worldwide into a single people who are not assimilable and who, to escape persecution, must establish their own state in Palestine or Argentina. On August 29, 1897, he organizes the first Zionist Congress in Basel, Switzerland, with the goal of preparing for the establishment of a homeland for the Jewish people. Herzl then goes
I can't
to
trust Switzerland
Constantinople
anymore.
to defend his cause with the Ottoman Sultan, but without success. London then offers to provide lands in British East Africa for a Jewish colony, but the offer is refused, with the Zionists now interested only in Palestine. At the same time, in Russia, a new wave of very deadly pogroms occurs, prompting new departures. This time, over roughly 10 years, about 40,000 Jews settle in Palestine. On the coast, they found Tel Aviv. And in the countryside, they buy lands and marshes, which they develop to form autonomous agricultural communities without private property. Additionally, Hebrew, which for nearly 15 centuries has been used only for religious worship, is gradually modernized so as to be spoken again within the Jewish community. In 1914, World War I begins. The Ottoman Empire sides with the Central Powers. Several fronts open against the United Kingdom, one towards the strategic Suez Canal, another in the Dardanelles, where an Allied landing is repelled, and a third in Mesopotamia, where a significant British army is defeated. Finding itself in a difficult situation, the United Kingdom searches for new support in the region. On the one hand, the country encourages Hussein bin Ali, the Sharif of Mecca, to revolt against the Ottoman Empire, promising him an independent Arab state. On the other hand, a secret agreement is signed with France for the partitioning of the Ottoman Empire after.
Brother, Acordul de la Sykes-Picot has to be one of the most bullshit ass thing in the history of the Western world.
Its defeat. And finally, in 1917, as the British Army is about to enter Palestine, the Foreign Minister, Arthur Balfour, publishes an open letter in which he announces that the country is favorable to the creation of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. At the end of the war, the Ottoman Empire is dismantled, mainly to the benefit of France and the United Kingdom. Winston Churchill then places two sons of Hussein bin Ali at the heads of Transjordan and Iraq, and retains Palestine west of the Jordan to establish a national home for the Jewish people, despite the opposition of the 600,000 Muslims and 70,000 Christians living there. Although in the minority, the 80,000 Jews living in Palestine organize themselves. They create a union for Jewish workers, set up the Haganah, an armed self-defense group, and create the Jewish Agency for Palestine, which serves as an unofficial government for the Yishuv.
Huh?
Jewish immigration from Europe accelerates with the support of the United Kingdom. However, the Arabs perceive these new migrants as invaders and organize demonstrations that often degenerate into massacres of Jews. But although largely in the majority, the Arabs do not have a strong common structure and are divided by conflicts between influential families. In 1933, in Germany, Hitler comes to power and begins a policy of persecution of Jews.
No, but what about what the other guy said? What about that? He's been like very open. Ăștia erau se cam bate
With the aim
că fie mult mai Israeli oriented video.
of excluding them from society. Many then flee to Palestine. Faced with this new influx, the Arabs come together to create the Arab Higher Committee, with Amin al-Husseini, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, at its head. He organizes a general strike against the British administration and demands the immediate end of Jewish immigration. The strike rapidly degenerates into guerrilla warfare, and a series of attacks are organized against the British and the Jews. In reaction, the Irgun, a military organization founded by the most radical members of the Haganah, avenges the assaults by organizing its own attacks. On its side, the United Kingdom sends significant military reinforcements to violently suppress the revolt. But the country realizes that it would be complicated to create a state that encompasses both communities and considers for the first time dividing Palestine into a Jewish state and an Arab state, while retaining under British mandate a strip of land up to Jerusalem. But for the first time, neighboring Arab countries unite and announce that they oppose the partitioning of Palestine and the creation of a Jewish state. However, on the eve of World War II, the United Kingdom needs allies in the region to maintain control of the eastern Mediterranean, through which Iraqi oil passes, and also to protect the Suez Canal. The country then radically changes its policy and commits to create, within the next 10 years, a unified state which will not be comprised of more than 1/3 Jews. As a result, Jewish immigration is now heavily restricted. While this turnaround eases tensions with the Arabs and ends the revolt, on the other side it provokes the anger of the Jews, who feel betrayed. At the start of World War II, Italy bombs Palestine and launches an offensive from Libya towards Egypt. But after being repelled by the British, significant German reinforcements land and take the upper hand. Fearing an invasion of Palestine, the Haganah creates the Palmach, an elite unit trained for war. Finally, the Germans are repelled from Egypt. Around 1943, information about the genocide of Jews by Nazi Germany begins to circulate. David Ben-Gurion, the president of the Jewish Agency, prepares a plan to allow the immigration of 1 million Jews to Palestine, with the main goal of strengthening the Zionist project. At the end of the war, at least 250,000 Jewish Holocaust survivors want to join Palestine, but the United Kingdom maintains its its policy and blocks their arrival. The Haganah then clandestinely organizes Jewish immigration. Those intercepted by the British are sent to camps in Cyprus. Faced with British intransigence, the Palmach, the Irgun, and the Lehi, a new armed terrorist group dreaming of establishing a Jewish state between the Nile and the Euphrates, organizes a campaign of sabotage and bombings against the British.
Wow, info.
On July 22nd, 1946, in Jerusalem, the Irgun commits a very deadly attack against the British administration. Put in some difficulty, the United Kingdom fails to forge an agreement between the Zionists and the Arab nationalists and decides to transfer the Palestinian problem to the UN, which had just been created. The latter sets up an international committee that proposes dividing the territory into two states, with Jerusalem under international control. The plan, which is supported by the United States, is adopted despite the opposition of Muslim countries. For the Zionists, this is an important victory, as they obtain their first international recognition. But on the other side, the entire Arab world opposes this plan and the creation of a Jewish state. In major cities, violence quickly escalates between Jews and Arabs and turns into a civil war. Ben-Gurion, aware that the Arab states will enter the war after the departure of the British, prepares the Yishuv for war. The population of fighting age is conscripted. Emissaries are secretly sent to Europe to buy arms, ammunition, and surplus equipment from World War II. And finally, Golda Meir, an influential woman originally from Kiev, is sent to the United States, where she obtains, from the very important Jewish community there, nearly $30 million in donations for the war. Quickly, the conflict moves from the cities to the countryside. With the Jewish community scattered, the Arabs attack supply convoys and take control of the roads. The 100,000 Jews living in Jerusalem find themselves besieged, while the first volunteers from the brand-new Arab Liberation Army enter the territory. Faced with escalating violence, the United States contemplates reconsidering the UN partition plan. For Ben-Gurion, there is urgency, and he initiates a military plan aimed at establishing territorial continuity. The idea is that no Arab village behind the line should be an internal threat or a support point for future Arab armies. Therefore, they must be destroyed, or
this sounds so Netanyahu, bro. Wait a minute. The idea is that no Arab village behind the line should be an internal threat point for future Arab enemies.
point for future Arab armies. Therefore, they must be destroyed, or their populations expelled, or strictly controlled.
Which happened. Okay.
There is still debate today as to whether this plan is solely military or whether it has a purpose of ethnic cleansing.
I think we know the answer to that.
The Haganah, which begins to clandestinely receive arms from Czechoslovakia, goes on the
What the fucking ass random what the bro? From Czechoslovakia. Oh my god, bro.
the offensive. It regains control of the road to Jerusalem and takes over the Arab villages that overlook it. The Irgun and Lehi then commit a massacre at Deir Yassin, which provokes terror among the Arab population, pushing many to flee. On their side, the neighboring Arab countries prepare for war, but each defends its own interests. Abdullah I wants to integrate Palestine into Jordan, promising to protect the Jews living there. The other states insist on control of their own armies, meaning the attack will not be coordinated. On May 14th, 1948, in Tel Aviv, Ben-Gurion proclaims the independence of the State of Israel. At midnight, the British mandate ends. And the next day, Arab armies enter the war against Israel. Ben-Gurion, now Prime Minister, unites all Jewish armed forces into a national army called the Israel Defense Forces, or IDF. On June 11th, the UN secures a truce.
Okay, so basically the IDF was first, dacă ce zice ele corect, the IDF was firstly forced between the groups care efectiv erau ziariști, anti-arabi, anti-whatever, so they are indeed historically, mentally at least trained to exterminate Arabs.
That primarily benefits Israel as the country continues to import arms, notably heavy weaponry from Czechoslovakia, with Moscow's support. At the end of the ceasefire, over just 10 days, the IDF captures major cities between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, expelling the Arab populations eastward. Nazareth in the north is also taken, this time without expelling its important Christian population. A second truce then begins, during which a Palestinian government is formed in Gaza, supported by Arab countries, with the exception of Jordan, which still wants to annex the territory. Separate negotiations start with Israel, leading to the signing of different armistices. Israel gains numerous territories, including West Jerusalem. Egypt takes control of the Gaza Strip, and Jordan integrates the West Bank into its territory. Approximately 700,000 Arabs were displaced or fled the war, and are now refugees in camps in Gaza, the West Bank, and neighboring countries. The Arab League and the UN want to allow their return, but Israel refuses. Only 150,000 Arabs now live in Israel. The country opens up to Jewish immigration, notably from Yemen and Iraq, where ancient Jewish communities are targeted. Within just 3 years, Israel's population doubles to about 1.4 million people. With the new border being porous, some Arab refugees attempt to return to their former villages, while others organize looting raids or attack Jews. Israel then creates Unit 101, led by Ariel Sharon, to organize retaliations. On October 14, 1953, this unit launches a nighttime raid against the village of Kibbya, which is razed, its population massacred. In the south, tensions are also high around the Egyptian border, where many raids and attacks occur. In 1956, Egypt's new president, Gamal Abdel Nasser, nationalizes the Suez Canal to the detriment of France and the United Kingdom. In response, these countries secretly approach Israel to organize an offensive against Egypt. The Israeli army quickly conquers the Sinai. However, in the context of the Cold War, the USSR and the United States intervene to put an end to the offensive. Israel must return the Sinai to Egypt, but gains a significant alliance with France, which provides weapons and helps build a nuclear reactor. In 1963, this reactor is inaugurated, allowing for the production of plutonium.
France, with all due respect.
But Israel maintains ambiguity about its nuclear program, leaking no information.
Deci aceștia se pregăteau de arme nucleare și palestinienii au zis let's try to do something.
In 1964, the Arab...
Motivul pentru care mi se pare funny e că gen ei au fost expelled și nu aveau cum, ce, nu aveau resurse, nu aveau nu știu ce și no, maybe știi, la aia mă gândesc și s-au dus contra nuclear powers like that.
Arab League unites the main Palestinian groups to form the Palestinian Liberation Organization, or PLO. it begins an armed struggle against Israel via terrorist attacks. One target is the brand new aqueduct that diverts
Bro calls them terrorist attacks. Dar atunci când ăștia vor invadat și omorât, masacrat, whatever, villages and people, Arab people, they calling it terrorists. Gen, mie mi se pare insane că we are calling terrorists, we're calling them terrorists because they're Arab. Dar dacă le fac ei, it's not terrorists, it's massacre.
some of the waters from the Sea of Galilee to help develop agriculture and populate the country's center. Arab countries try to block this project by starting construction of canals to divert the lake's sources. However, taking advantage of a border incident, Israel bombs the construction site. Tensions rise again, and Nasser deploys his troops to the border with Israel and organizes the blockade of the Straits of Tiran, closing access to the port of Eilat. Israel sees this as a declaration of war and launches an offensive against Egypt and its allies, Syria and Jordan, who are bombing Israel. In just 6 days, Israel wins and takes control of the Sinai, the Golan Heights, and Palestinian territories. The first Israeli settlers begin establishing communities there, despite the UN's call for withdrawal from what it calls the occupied territories. Yasser Arafat, the new strongman of the PLO, takes refuge in Jordan, where he intensifies attacks against Israel. He gains power and even attempts to overthrow the Jordanian king, but without success. The latter then attacks the Palestinians in the country. Yasser
Ce am învățat eu din conflictul ăsta e că Iordanul efectiv era anti-both. Iordanul pur și simplu just wanted the territory.
Arafat then flees to Lebanon, where he continues the armed struggle against Israel, including terrorist attacks worldwide. In
Terrorist attacks worldwide?
1972, during the Munich Olympics, a Palestinian commando team takes the Israeli delegation hostage and kills 11 athletes.
See, that's something that I condemn throughoutly. But I'm not looking at that and say dacă conflictul ăsta ar fi fost rezolvat, this wouldn't happen.
On October 6th,
Interesul nu era să fie rezolvat, interesul era altceva. Interesul era să aibă control cineva la niște pământ.
1973, Egypt and Syria launch a surprise attack against Israel.
So all I'm saying is puterile ăștia mari care se dau în vânt că they can solve whatever, and it's complicated. We can't let them have that and what. Bro, you killed more people indirectly in this whole planet because you can't just give up your ego and resource whatever. Just my god.
With the goal of recovering the Sinai and the Golan Heights. Initially, Israel is at a disadvantage, but within a week manages to gain the upper hand, notably with the support of the United States, which sends weapons via an airlift.
Mie asta mi se pare insane că gen ok, ăștia vin și dau supplies la Israel, but they don't realize că by doing so they weaken the ties, they make Israel look bad, they indirect, gen, man, oamenii ăia care au murit acolo la Olimpice în München, it's not the core fault, okay, it's the people that did it, but the core fault is behind it. Gen, vina efectivă vine mai în spate din punctul meu de vedere, vine din cauza că ăștia au făcut niște căcaturi acolo și oamenii ei au avut the fuel necessary to go there and do that, la modul de las că le arătăm noi, având în vedere că ne-au tratat așa de căcat, right? So they gave them a reason, aia vreau să spun. It's not that they make up the reason. Motivele nu sunt cum fac ăștia de le inventează și sunt la modul de hey, whatever. Eu nu zic că gen unele grupuri teroriste din zona asta de zona arabă nu fac atrocități. They do. They rape women. They do a lot of bad shit. Generally speaking, when you are attacking, when it's a war, when există un conflict din astea, or you can't tell me that armies don't take advantage of that. Armies sau violent groups simply put, they break any rule that humanity has. Deci aia face războiul, indiferent orice atac, orice război, that's what it does.
In response, Arab oil-producing countries reduce production to raise the price of oil and also impose an oil embargo on Israel's allies. A ceasefire is then signed, and initial negotiations take place between Israel and Egypt. In 1977, Egyptian President Anwar el-Sadat becomes the first Arab head of state to make an official visit to Israel. 2 years later, the two countries sign a peace treaty. Egypt recognizes Israel, in exchange for which the country regains the Sinai. With the southern border secured, Israel now focuses on Lebanon, where political instability benefited the PLO, which continues its attacks against Israel with Syria's support. Israeli forces invade southern Lebanon and, after the siege of Beirut, obtain the departure of the PLO to Tunisia. But in 1985, Israel bombs the new PLO headquarters in Tunis.
Deci era adevărată chestia că oriunde se duc ăștia, they're come out.
1987, in the Gaza Strip, the Palestinian population revolts against the Israeli occupation, armed with stones and Molotov cocktails, marking the start of the First Intifada.
Stones and Molotov cocktails, meanwhile ăștia cu nuclear weapons. Bro, dar el nu menționează de faptul că au încercat baza cu să nu plătească taxele, să nu mai cumpere de la branduri israeliene, să do whatever it can, and then they went to violently.
The violence quickly escalates and spreads across all occupied territories. The spontaneous revolt is taken over by more radical organizations, such as Hamas, an Islamist organization created for the occasion by members of the Muslim Brotherhood, advocating jihad against Israel.
Hold up. Zicea că Hamas a fost făcut în 1993. When was Hamas founded? Ok. Probabil, nu, în 33 cred că o intra la... Nu? 1993, nu 33.
Contrast, Yasser Arafat softens his policy. In Algiers, he proclaims the State of Palestine, recognizes Israel, and renounces all forms of terrorism against it. Within a year, 87 countries recognize Palestine. Initial meetings then take place and culminate in 1993 with the signing of an historic first agreement between Yasser Arafat and Yitzhak Rabin, the Israeli prime minister. They mutually recognize each other, and Israel commits to gradually withdrawing from major Palestinian cities. However, radicals from both sides oppose this rapprochement, seeking to thwart any agreement. On February 25, 1994, in Hebron, an Israeli terrorist kills 29
Thank you, troll me terrorist. Deci dacă zicea aggressor, I would have lost it.
Palestinians in a mosque. The following year, a Jewish extremist student assassinates Yitzhak Rabin in Tel Aviv. Conversely, Hamas,
Deci pur și simplu când Israel a avut și ei o perioadă din asta de let us ease the tension, give them whatever they want. Ăștia care erau îndoctrinați dinainte wanted to get rid of them, pur și simplu.
which opposes the recognition of Israel, organizes a wave of terrorist attacks across the country. In 2000, U.S. President Bill Clinton invites the new Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak and Yasser Arafat for new negotiations. This time, they fail on more sensitive issues, such as the return of Palestinian refugees, the status of Jerusalem, which each wants as their capital, and the control of the city's holy sites. Muslims control the Temple Mount, which houses the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque, but but the place is also a holy site for Jews, as the ruins of the Second Temple and perhaps those of Solomon's Temple are located there. On September 28, 2000, Ariel Sharon, now a politician, visits the site. For Palestinians, this is seen as a provocation.
What do you mean visits the site? Dude, au venit cu 1000 de soldați.
Protests are organized and quickly degenerate. Faced with violent Israeli repression, a new wave of terrorist attacks is organized across the country. The Arab League then offers Israel peace, the recognition of the country, and the normalization of their relationship in exchange for a complete withdrawal from the occupied territories. But Ariel Sharon, now prime minister, refuses and even instructs the Israeli army to retake full control of the West Bank. Concurrently, he begins the construction of a separation barrier
Deci ăsta e handicapatul care putea asta, ok.
along the border, officially to protect against terrorist attacks, but its route incorporates new territories. The barrier is widely condemned, including by the UN and the International Court of Justice. To ease tensions, Ariel Sharon dismantles the 21 Israeli settlements in the Gaza Strip and evacuates the territory. In 2006, Palestinian elections are held. Hamas, considered a terrorist organization by the European Union and the United States, wins, and its leader Ismail Haniyeh becomes prime minister. But soon, armed conflict breaks out between Hamas and its main rival Fatah. The latter takes control of the West Bank, while Hamas takes full control of the Gaza Strip. Israel then imposes a blockade on the territory, supported by Egypt. 2 million people are trapped on a strip of land 365 kilometers square.
Not to mention, 365 de kilometri pătrați e roughly un pic mai mare decât Belgradul. Și în Belgrad sunt 1,3 milioane de oameni.
Without international aid and in the hands of Hamas, which regularly fires rockets into Israel. In retaliation, the Israeli army bombs and then invades the Gaza Strip. After destroying any infrastructure that could be used by Hamas, including public facilities, the IDF withdraws. In 2012, Palestine obtains the status of a non-member observer state at the UN. The following year, new peace negotiations are organized at the call of U.S. President Barack Obama, but these fail, partly because during the negotiations, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu accelerates colonization of the occupied territories, and additionally because Fatah and Hamas attempt to reconcile, which angers Netanyahu, who ends the negotiations. Netanyahu then launches a new offensive against the Gaza Strip in response to rockets fired into Israel by Hamas. 18,000 homes are destroyed, along with much public infrastructure, including the only power plant. After the war, Israel
De aici intrăm deja în 2015 unde videoclipul a fost făcut, așa că s-a fost publicat, așa că probabil de aici este new information that we didn't get before.
begins the construction of a wall along the entire border, which also reaches tens of meters deep into the ground to prevent tunnel passage. In 2017, Donald Trump becomes president of the United States. That same year, he recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and prepares to move his embassy there. For Palestinians, this is seen as a new provocation. In the Gaza
I forgot about that. Oh my god, bro. Și dacă ținem aici Ierusalim, am înțeles. Very soon after the conquest of East Jerusalem, Israel migrated to East Jerusalem with West Jerusalem being in July 19, așa. Which declared Jerusalem is the unified capital of Israel. Ok. Și care era faza cu... Cel mai mare oraș din Israel, principalul centru economic, tehnologic și de afaceri al țării. Ai... Mulți încă zic că e Tel Avivul capitala, so...
Gaza Strip,
Și motivul pentru care ei they are angered is because they also live there.
an officially peaceful march is organized, also demanding an end to the blockade and the return to their land for the many refugees.
Peaceful, by the way.
But Israel retaliates to some attacks by firing on the crowd. In 2020, Trump achieves the normalization of relations between Israel, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan. But the Palestinians are ignored during these meetings and gain no advantage.
Look at his face. How is he such an ass?
On October 7th, 2023, Hamas launches a major offensive against Israel.
Major. Compared to what Israeli does, this is major. The security wall is breached and terrorists massacre 1,039 people and about 50 people are taken hostage.
Security wall is breached and the terrorists massacre 1,139 people and about 250 people are taken hostage. It takes Israel a week to regain control. It then retaliates by massively bombing the entire Gaza Strip and begins an invasion of the territory. As of the writing of this text, at least 32,000 Palestinians have died. Today, more than ever, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict seems to be without resolution. Many questions remain unresolved. First, there's the status of the 5.9 million refugees, 1.5 million of whom still live in camps, with the hope of one day returning to the land of their ancestors. There's also the status of Jerusalem, which each side would like as its capital, as well as control of the holy sites located there. Some Jews today dream of building a third temple on the Temple Mount. There's also the question of the 700,000 Jewish settlers living in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. They are subject to Israeli law and therefore have more rights than Palestinians, who, for example, risk 10 years in prison if they demonstrate. In the event of peace, what will happen to the settlers, and how will the border between Israel and Palestine be defined? In the Gaza Strip, the current humanitarian situation is catastrophic, and everything will need to be rebuilt. Internationally, the United States and the European Union remain Israel's biggest allies. Conversely, Iran is its greatest enemy. The country militarily supports Hezbollah, which regularly attacks from Lebanon, the Houthis of Yemen, who target Israeli and its allies' ships in the Red Sea, and Palestinian groups such as Hamas and Islamic Jihad. Hamas also receives significant support from Qatar, which hosts its leaders.
Yeah, well, anyway, big dump of info. Eu tot cred că e un pic Israeli-centered, așa, un pic. Ne uităm un pic la comentarii să vedem ce zic oamenii de aici. See what they say. Backstory for the long delay. Due to sensitivity of this topic, I spent more time on research. The video is longer than usual, which means more editing work. I hope this video helps you understand better the complex and controversial topic. Controversial, stay respectful in your comments, please. See you soon. Glad you're back. Your videos are amazing quality time. Thank you. The Palestine Hotel, often referred to as simply the Palestine, is a 16-story hotel in the Baghdad, Iraq, located first of Sudan across the history. It's long been favored by journalists and media personnel. The hotel overlooks the Tigris, so this was several hundred meters south by that hotel history. What? Important to know, the Philistines were Greek people, not the present-day Palestinians. Yeah. This was obvious. Veneau din Europa, nu? What? 99% of comments about how bad the comment section is gonna be. And yet another point that is missing is that when Israel made peace with Jordan and Egypt, they refused to take West Bank. and Gaza respectively under their control, even though they used to occupy these territories before. Precisely because it was occupation, Jordan literally annexed the entirety of West Bank and gave out Jordanian citizenship to all the Arabs there. The occupation argument might fly for Gaza, which wasn't officially made an Egyptian territory. West Bank is more over given for Palestinians to make their own land rather than just be part of Israel. It's complicated enough, but to give perspective, the Arab nations would have succeeded if it wasn't for Israelites to protest for independence and fight for their country as a nation. I've seen multiple videos before the war showing Palestinians throwing rocks at Israelis for entering the Temple of Jerusalem, because according to the Palestinians, it's their mosque, which was built by Umayyad Caliphate, who invaded Israel and built Al-Aqsa Mosque for their convenience. Occupation is also a way to extend land, my guy, to you. Do you think empires around the world did not occupy and invade to increase their land? You refuse to acknowledge that Israel was willing to sacrifice their hard-earned defensive conquest land for more peace. What? Their hard-earned defensive conquest land for more peace. Israel wanted peace. This guy doesn't know what he's on about. This is going to be very civil and respectful comment section. Egypt, Palestinians, our brothers, and in language and faith, also Egypt. Co-blockades. Fuck you, Egypt, bro. I never understood why did they have to do that. Anyway, it's really funny that people say that this is pro-Israel and others that is pro-Palestinian. Yeah, actually, yes. I said it's pro-Israel, albeit not that much. It's incorrect to use this flag while representing Palestinians before the creation of Israel. This flag was only adopted in 1964. Man was missing for half a year, now we get what he was cooking. After the channel isn't afraid to just state facts there with simple animation and easy to follow. Two important things to mention. Palestinians aren't okay. Secondly, the name Palestine was originally for Philistia and was given to the land of Israel after the defending of Bar Kokhba revolt in the 2nd century as a way to mock the Jews. As the name Philistia, as you might have already guessed, is there for Philistines who were one biblically enemies of... Okay. Arabs originated from Yemen, not Saudi. Also, Arabic ethnicities moved to Palestine 6,000 years ago. The tribes of Canaan and Yemeni tribes. And from Arabian Peninsula. Secondly, there isn't a single historian who really thinks that Palestinians are a Canaanite tribe. And no, the Canaanites were not Yemeni tribes, but were diverse beings. What the how is there so much debate? How do we not know exactly what the fuck happened? Mi se pare atât de insane că se contrazice lumea de about where do people come from, how is that, vine din est, nu din vest, vine din nord, nu din sud. What the how do we not know? If you don't know, let's agree that we don't know. What the fuck? Incorrect. Palestinians, a combination of local Levantine people, Greeks, and so Arabs were not in Palestine 300 years or less. They were over since 3,000 years. No, not only Arabs, but Armenians and Assyrians and many other races, they call themselves Palestinians. We have a single source that these people are called Palestinians before Roman conquest, and would like to see it. The Palestinians did not originate from Saudi Arabia. They learned Arabic. Original Arabs, Yemen, Saudis did not ethnically cleanse the region, then replace it with themselves. Yes, they were. There was a conquest, but there was no ethnic cleansing. You also see these many in Africa, North Africa, and Spain. Well, Lord, did you do your research? Remember, Rome were in control of that. Slight correction. The northern kingdom of Israel was conquered by Assyrians. Only later in the southern kingdom of Judah get conquered by Babylonia, so they were not conquered at the same time and not by the same people. Other than that, a very objective and unbiased video. Small correction. Around that, the Jews were exiled in Arab countries. Turnkey more than Arab Jews. Why do you have to mention that? When? In the 50s. Only in Egypt and Jordan they were expelled in a classical sense, among 100,000 Jews. Most Arab nations, in fact, banned the Jews from leaving to not strengthen Israel They may have faced discrimination, but they were not exiled. In some countries, like Algeria, like many before the war, nothing to do with Israel. In other countries, they eventually left when the Israelis negotiated. And so, yeah, when that happened, and how many Palestinians were exiled there when Israel took control. Thanks for the replies. Details are details, but I think what's important is finding peace and growing conflict. Oh, of course. If we're gonna pick a side, do it based on facts. I truly don't care what side you fall on, just from your alliance to the truth. What? In a recent genetic study, Jews from several diaspora were examined. The research was done to learn how to treat diseases and characteristics. What the fuck? As an Israeli who went to public school, the idea that Israeli only teaches Bible stories as history is ridiculous. We had Bible class and history class, and they were totally separate. Oh, what? You left out the 1949 Lausanne Conference. It's not true that Israel refused to allow refugees to return. Rather, they wanted formal peace from the Arab state. So much peace, bro. So much peace. Finally, there has been age restricted, demonetized for violating YouTube guidelines. You're missing the other countries that Asian Jews came from: Morocco, Algeria, blah blah blah. And the reason they left, it was just persecution or exile. First guy called genocide. First guy called genocide based. I think the second one can really kill him. That's just common sense, and Allah means God, which means the translated God is the greatest. And again, this whole land is one of the most controversial places in the world. Sure, Jews are the first in Abraham religion, the Christian, and finally Islam. Imagine Jew. I'm sorry how we see Russia and treat. I'm sorry how we in Russia treated Jews. They didn't do it yesterday, yet they do it. You also did nothing to represent your country. That's right, as I would generally, you are not responsible for the sins of your forefathers. The only responsible for the sins of anyone bears is learning from the past and not repeating. Yeah, learn from the past. How about you learn from what you've done before and stop bombing Palestine? What the crap? I'm amazed that you left the comment section open for this video. Oh boy, I'm sure this comment is gonna be very civil. The video is about Israel and Palestine. Open comment section. I haven't seen many videos that talk about the conflict in such an unbiased manner. I don't think this is unbiased though. I really don't think this is unbiased. I would love to know more and to read more books, but I really don't feel like this is unbiased. Just because so many people seem to claim that they know the truth. Pur și simplu mi se pare că there's no, like, orice aș citi am impresia că it's still westernized. I don't know why, I just have that feeling. Sure, westernized is not good, by the way. It's not necessarily bad, but it's not good either. Let's look at Al Jazeera for a minute, and then we get to play some games. So, what are we doing today is basically trying to see what's happening in Gaza. De 1 iunie, ziua copilului, noi avem parte de soare, avem parte de liniște, avem parte de distracție, avem parte de pace. De 1 iunie, ziua copilului, by the way. In 1925, International Children's Day was first proclaimed in Geneva during World Conference on Children Warfare or Welfare. Pardon. Since 1950, it is celebrated on 1st June in many countries, which follows suggestion from Women's International Democratic Federation. Do they celebrate Children's Day in there? Noi avem în România, în Portugalia, în... El a fost la ei a fost în 5 aprilie. Children's Day in Arabic. At the first Palestine Child Conference, the late President Yasser Arafat declared his commitment to the International Convention of the Rights of the Child and declared the 5th of April Day as the Palestinian Child. Day of the Palestinian Child. So it's not... But it's still... nu e neapărat recunoscută ziua de 1 pentru ei, but... According to a report by Palestinian Prisoner Club, Israeli authorities have arrested 45 prisoners in the region in 1984. From the beginning of 19 of their show, the Prisoners Club said in a report on the eve of the International Days, which falls on 20 November each year, that approximately 200 children continue to be detained by the occupation authorities in the detention center of the Megiddo, Ofer, and Daman detention center. In addition to a number of other children held in private centers in Jerusalem, the Prisoners Club pointed to a series of actions carried out by the Israeli occupation authorities against violent youth. That is disgusting. In Romania, Children's Day is copilului celebrated on the 1st of June. Children often receive presents from the parents of family members. Various events are organized. Public holiday. Asta ar fi o zi liberă de la stat dacă... So, yeah. Teoretic asta ne se pune în plus. Luați de aici. Alright. America. What about you? Children's Day observation, Mother's Day, blah blah blah. General celebrated in June or October. Or. Așa decide așa peste noapte când să celebreze. Arab World. 20 noiembrie. Oh, e. Pentru noi ziua copilului înseamnă ce înseamnă. La ei de ziua copilului, la noi e să fie ziua copilului la nivel global. Acum mă uit și ne uităm să vedem la câteva imagini despre ce se mai întâmplă pe acolo ca să acknowledge the fact that not all kids can be happy in the same day and on the same planet. Pentru că suntem efectiv și trăim într-o lume destul de fucked up right now. Hamas views Biden's Gaza truce offer positively. Netanyahu sets condition. 7-year-old Palestinian flees Rafah with little farm. 7-year-old Ahmed was displaced by Israeli attacks on Rafah, but he made sure to save his plants as a symbol of hope. Where do we go? #Rafah. Ahmed and his family were forced to flee from Rafah when Israel launched its ground offensive there on May 6th.
أنا بدي أنقذ نباتي معاي عشان اليهود بدهم يخشوا رفح. يا أصدقائي زي ما انتم شايفين أنقذت مزرعتي معاي ما قدرتش أتخلى عنها. قررنا نستغل الأرض اللي احنا عايشين فيها ونزرع فيها. أول إشي زرعنا البصل ولا نزرع الذرة. يا أصدقائي تتذكروا النبات اللي زرعناهم زمان؟ طلعوا كيف التراب ما شاء
Wait. I
الله.
wanna. Sorry, I was focusing on the stream a little bit.
يا أصدقائي زي ما انتم شايفين بطلعتي معاي ما قدرتش نخلى عنها.
Yes, a little far.
قررنا نستغل الأرض اللي احنا عايشين فيها ونزرع فيها. أول شيء زرعنا البصل ولا نزرع الذرة. يا أصدقائي تتذكروا النبات اللي زرعناهم زمان؟ طلعوا كيف الذرة ما شاء الله. طلعوا كيف البصل. لما يكبر البصل كمان بدي ألقطه وأعمل فيه أحسن طبخة مسخن فلسطيني. مرحبا أصدقائي، وأخيرا الحمد لله قدرنا نبني الخيمة. وهي مطبخنا، وهذا عشان أعملكم أحلى وصفاتي. تعالوا أوريك المفاجأة. تدا! هاي مزرعة الحمد لله وصلت بأمان. بحبكم كتير كتير. مالك يا أحمد؟ تذكرت أيام زمان لما كانت أمي تحكي لي روح نام يا أحمد عليك مدرسة الصبح. أتمنى لا تنسوا أطفال غزومات، لا تنسوني. تعال نشوف هتخلص الحرب ولا لا. هتخلص الحرب مش هتخلص الحرب. مش هتخلص الحرب. هتخلص الحرب. والله خلصت الحرب يا رب.
This kid deserves the world, bro. It made me so emotional. What the fuck? Do I have to? May you find peace, Ahmed. Bro, Israeli bombing kills 2 Palestinians in Zaytun, Gaza City. Again. A school housing displaced people in the Zaytun neighborhood southeast of Gaza. What the fucking shit?
A precise weapon that is capable of being targeted with precision, launched by a military with quite advanced targeting practices and training, that tends to suggest that the hospital itself is being targeted.
Survivors of the Al Ahli hospital attack tried to seek shelter in Al Shifa and Al Nasr hospitals. But there was also heavy bombing in those areas, and they were forced to move south down Salah ad-Din Street.
قامت بين المنطقة الغربية بإقامة أحزمة نارية بالقصف من الطائرات ومن الدبابات. وعندما أذكر الأحزمة النارية هنا لابد أن أشير بأنه يتم استهداف المنطقة التي يراد قصفها بالأحزمة النارية بغارات جوية متتالية وبقصف مدفعي متتالي لساعات متواصلة، بحيث أن تكون درجة الحرارة تزيد ضمن المنطقة عن 1400 درجة مئوية. وبوجود القوات الإسرائيلية من الجهة الشمالية والجهة الشرقية وإقامة الحزام الناري من الجهة الغربية، لم يتبقى لهؤلاء المرضى والجرحى والمصابين إلا أن يقوموا بالتوجه جنوبا، וهذا هو كان هدف القوات الإسرائيلية.
במקביל אנחנו נערכים לכניסה קרקעית. זהו השלב השני של המלחמה, שמטרותיה ברורות.
The Israeli army began its ground invasion into the north of the Gaza Strip on the 26th of October. Tanks were accompanied by heavy airstrikes near Al-Quds Hospital and other medical facilities in Gaza City. Ambulances carrying the injured couldn't then reach these hospitals, and those sheltering there became trapped inside.
قصف عنيف الآن في محيط مستشفى الإندونيسي.
In the week that followed, the Israeli army attacked areas near the Indonesian hospital, Al-Quds Hospital, the Turkish Al-Sadaqa Hospital, and Al-Wafa Hospital. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs said on the 6th of November that 122,000 displaced people were sheltering in Gaza's hospitals. The hospitals in the north still had no fuel, medical supplies, or electricity.
We are certainly seeing parallels happen here, where Israeli forces are systematically targeting and impacting healthcare infrastructure, making medical facilities essentially be forced to cease their operations because they cannot continue providing treatment safely, or they do not have the fuel to continue running generators. And so medical facilities are being forced out of service. That is having disastrous impacts on the civilian population.
It was at this time that the Israeli army began to threaten to attack Al-Shifa hospital. It made the repeated claim that it was the site of a Hamas command center. Both Hamas and the hospital always denied this. A World Health Organization report in December 2023 said that around 50,000 displaced people had taken shelter there at that time.
مجمع الشفاء يقدم خدمات لما يزيد عن 40% من خدمات وزارة الصحة.
Right now, terrorists move freely in Shifa Hospital and other hospitals in Gaza. We have concrete evidence that hundreds of terrorists flooded into the hospital to hide there. Hamas uses Shifa Hospital as a shield for Hamas terror infrastructure. Hamas wages war from hospitals.
It's widely accepted that Hamas has an extensive tunnel network across Gaza. The Rome Statute, which established the International Criminal Court, makes an exception to a hospital's protected status if it has so-called military objectives, in which case it can be considered a legitimate target. But it also says that if there is any doubt about a hospital being used for military purposes, the presumption must be that it is not.
There is no such thing as a military hospital target in Gaza. I've never seen a soldier inside the hospitals. I've never seen a command center anywhere. I have seen the signs on the doors saying no arms in here. And I, for one, would never have worked there if these hospitals were military.
There didn't seem to be incontrovertible evidence that Al-Shifa was being used for military purposes by Hamas. Nevertheless, Israeli ground troops surrounded the hospital on 13 November, and the Air Force bombed it despite the large numbers of people sheltering there. 2 days later, they raided the hospital.
الآن استهداف جديد في هذه الأوقات، استهداف جديد يتواجد حاليا في مستشفى الشفاء. قصفوا قدام المستشفى وقصفوا في الشوارع المحيطة، فالقصف حرفيا كان مستمر بشكل كبير 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 ليقدروا يخوفوا الناس. دبابات حوطت تقريبا المستشفى في محيط 300 متر. كمان كان يتم قنص أي حد بيتحرك داخل المستشفى قريب من الشبابيك، وكمان تم استهداف المبنى التخصصي بصاروخ مدفعية على أحد الشبابيك وكان في شهيد وعدة إصابات.
هذا القسم تعرض فجر اليوم إلى قصف مباشر من قبل قوات الاحتلال الإسرائيلي. لا نعلم إن كنا سنتقدم وإن كان الأمر آمنا بالأصل. تقدمنا بعض الشيء وتقدمت الكاميرا لترصد ما حدث بالضبط داخل هذا القسم.
الاحتلال الإسرائيلي داخل مستشفى الشفاء وحالة الخوف والذعر.
الآن بدأت قضية الدخول البري لمجمع الشفاء الطبي. في هذا اليوم فقدنا ما يقارب نصف الطاقم الطبي، إضافة خرج تقريبا من 50,000 نازح وتبقى تقريبا 4,000 أو 5,000. هذا كان يوم جمعة. يوم الاثنين فعلا بدأت اللحظات الأولى من الاجتياح البري لمجمع الشفاء الطبي.
What we've seen in Shifa Hospital, where patient was forced to evacuate in dire condition, in terrible condition, was terrible to see, and many of them also couldn't get access to the hospital because of this. The hospital was completely closed.
تم إخلاءنا بالقوة من مجمع الشفاء الطبي، واستشهد منا ما يقارب 40 أو 45 طبيب لحتى الآن. هذا ما نعرفه لحتى هذه الدقائق، وقد يكون آخرين هناك. إطلاق نار علينا من جميع الاتجاهات الآن.
الاستهداف الجسدي، التصفية الجسدية، أنا برأيي مدروسة ومنهجية. يعني لما تشوف الأطباء اللي تم استهدافهم بيعملوا بتخصصات كتير مفقودة بقطاع غزة. يعني الدكتور اللوح، طبيب الأمراض الكلى الوحيد بقطاع غزة، دكتور هاني الهيثم الأخصائي الوحيد للطوارئ بقطاع غزة.
We're inside the MRI center of the Shifa Hospital. Israeli troops reached here a few hours ago and we have cleared the area. What you will be able to see is military equipment. There is an AK-47, there are cartridges, ammo, there are grenades in here. Is a laptop. We found it in the MRI room. This is how the laptop looks.
However, some international broadcasters cast doubt on the Israeli video evidence.
Nous n'avons à ce jour strictement aucune preuve pour démontrer que l'hôpital Al-Shifa aurait été utilisé comme un centre de commandement ou un centre de camouflage pour la direction du Hamas.
Even after the Israeli occupation army got to Shifa, they could prove nothing. They did not need these allegations to bomb and destroy all the other hospitals in Gaza, which we will come back to, because they have been actually destroying so many hospitals without any claim of being a military target.
عند المصابين كان في مستشفى الأندونيسي. أول ما تحصرنا عبرت الدبابات بالجرافات، هدوا سور الأندونيسي، قعدوا حوالي 8 ساعات. طبعا السور كلهيته هذا هدوه واقتحموا وضربوا الدور الثالث والدور الثاني العناية، وصار 15 شهيد كان في العناية اللي استشهدوا من القصف فوق ما هم متصاوبين. وبعدين دخلوا رجلية. طبعا احنا تحت اطلاق النار، ومن وين اللي الخبط جاي ما نعرفش، وقالوا لنا كلكم اطلع. طلعنا كلنا رافعين يعني منزلين هيك ايدينا ورؤوسنا بالارض. اخذ الشباب وصوروهم فتشوهم وصاروا عشوائي يطخوا. احنا لما نسلق اقتحام للمستشفى صاروا ينادوا ويقولوا اطلعوا، احنا بلغناكم تطلعوا على الجنوب عشان هناك امن، لكن ما فيش امان.
The December Israeli raid was not the only attack on Al-Shifa Hospital. In March 2024, Israeli forces besieged and bombed it again over a 2-week period. The buildings were burned and left in a state of complete devastation. Eyewitnesses said that hundreds of bodies were left lying in the hospital and on nearby streets. A month or so later, health officials discovered 3 mass graves immediately outside Al-Shifa Hospital. But back in the 3rd week of November 2023, the healthcare system in the northern Gaza Strip was already on its knees, and the health ministry declared its complete collapse.
كما أن الاحتلال الإسرائيلي تعمد تدمير مستشفيات شمال قطاع غزة وترك 800,000 نسمة في هذه المنطقة الحساسة بلا خدمات صحية.
It was such systematic that the destruction was not about one hospital or two hospitals, but the destruction of the health system as a whole. The entire health system of the north of Gaza was destroyed.
The Israeli soldiers, when they came to Shifa, they started attacking the MRI machines. What is this? How can you attack a hospital equipment which has absolutely no military meaning at all?
That's my question as well.
Meanwhile, the international community began to argue that Israel's response to the 7th of October Hamas-led attacks was disproportionate. In January 2024, South Africa brought a case before the International Court of Justice arguing that it amounted to genocide.
Génocide par la destruction des conditions d'existence du groupe social. La destruction de l'accès aux points de santé, ce qu'on appelle le droit de la guerre, le droit international humanitaire repose sur un principe qui est la distinction entre les objectifs civils et les objectifs militaires. Et donc, les objectifs civils doivent être protégés. Bon. Et au sein de cette protection, il y a une protection renforcée pour les établissements de santé. C'est-à-dire qu'on j'entends parfois en disant oui, c'est un objectif civil. Non, non, c'est pas qu'un objectif civil, c'est au sein des objectifs civils un objectif renforcé.
Targeting hospitals could be an intent to, convey messages of terror to civilians and suggest that there is no safe place. When you have medical facilities being forced out of service during a conflict, civilians will naturally move to places where they think they have increased chances of getting access to healthcare.
An estimated 1.5 million Palestinian residents moved from the north of the Gaza Strip to the south. Individual waves of displacement seem to have occurred immediately following Israeli attacks on hospitals and their surrounding areas.
Le lien est absolument direct entre le bombardement des hôpitaux et le déplacement des victimes. Mais le nombre de victimes, il est à deuxième degré 1,5 million. C'est-à-dire que tout le monde, à commencer par les Israéliens, disent qu'effectivement il y a 1,5 million de personnes qui ont quitté leur déplacement et qui sont en situation de transfert forcé. Bon, 1,5 million. Je rappelle que la Nakba, c'était 700 000, et 700 000, ça s'était fait en un an. Là, on est sur 1,5 million en quelques jours. C'est-à-dire que c'est d'une violence qui n'a jamais été vue.
So aggressively pursued Al-Quds Hospital, Shifa Hospital, Mustashfa Al-Ahli Arab, the other hospitals in the north. Why? Because the hospitals are military installations? No. But because the hospitals is part of the anchor that keeps the society and the people to a certain village, a city, a place to live.
بالثقافة السياسية الفلسطينية الصحة جزء أساسي من الصمود ومقاومة الاحتلال.
Il n'y a que là que l'on comprend. Et la ligne, c'est la destruction des conditions d'existence. Le ciblage des hôpitaux avec ce côté général et systématique n'est du jamais vu dans aucune guerre.
Bro, how can you look at a hospital and
من
say
بداية العمليات كانت
bomb it?
إسرائيل تسعى بأن تقوم بتقطيع هذا القطاع إلى 3 مناطق: المنطقة الشمالية والمنطقة الوسطى والمنطقة الجنوبية. وهنا أود أن أشير بأن اتجاه الحركة الذي كانت تسمح به إسرائيل هو الحركة باتجاه واحد ومنع العودة من الجنوب باتجاه الشمال.
الآن قصف عنيف جدا في الساحة الخلفية لمستشفى شهداء الأقصى. الآن إصابات وشهداء في المستشفى.
Israel continued to state that the south of Gaza would be a safe haven. But these satellite images from late 2023 show tightly packed camps near hospitals in the southern towns of Khan Yunis and Rafah. These were where the estimated 1.5 million people displaced from the north were sheltering. But these were far from being so-called safe zones. The Israeli army stormed Al-Nasser hospital in Khan Yunis in February 2024, And in March, Al Amal Hospital ceased functioning when troops forced medical staff and patients to evacuate. The Israeli army justified this as part of an operation to locate hostages.
IDF special forces were compelled to operate in the Nasser hospital to fulfill our mission of finding our hostages and hunting down the terrorists that kidnapped them from Israel in the first place. Terrorists that I can now confirm have been hiding and operating from the Nasser hospital in Khan Yunis.
وإسرائيل استعملت عام 48
Why do you have to read that if you know that?
في حرب غزة 2023 أساليب ومنهجيات مشابهة. كانت القوات الإسرائيلية تسدد ضربات إلى النازحين لتدفعهم أكثر وأكثر نحو مناطق خارج حدود فلسطين، وبالتالي تمنع منهم أي إمكانية للعودة.
هدفت إسرائيل احتلال شمال القطاع والسيطرة عليه بشكل تام لكي تقول أنها حققت هدفاً استراتيجياً مهماً وخلقت منطقة عازلة لا يمكن الوصول إلى الأراضي المحتلة الإسرائيلية من هذه المنطقة. إنما حتى الآن رغم احتلال إسرائيل 80% من شمال القطاع إلا أنها لم تسيطر عليه بعد.
During the war on Gaza, the Israeli army has repeatedly denied that it had a policy of deliberately targeting hospitals.
Hamas is hiding behind hospitals. Hamas is sickly exploiting hospitals to disguise its war machine.
When it did attack hospitals like Al-Shifa, it justified it on the basis that it was shielding a so-called Hamas command center. Al Jazeera contacted both the Israeli army and the foreign ministry on 2 occasions, asking them to comment on allegations that it deliberately targeted hospitals, but they did not reply. Hospitals, clinics, and health facilities underpin the social structure of any community, especially during conflict. The collapse of the health system in the Gaza Strip has exacerbated a chronic situation that the UN has called on the world to address.
The people of Gaza are in the midst of an epic humanitarian catastrophe before the eyes of the world. We must not look away.
Many countries in the world have now called for an end to the war on Gaza, and the ICC is seeking arrest warrants for war crimes allegedly committed by both sides. These include Israel's deliberate targeting of civilians in what to many is a disproportionate form of collective punishment.
Holocaust. This was an Al Jazeera production.
I was playing on a scooter with my cousin, he says. We were on our way home when we saw an Israeli jeep driving towards us, so we started running. Soldiers began shooting, Jude was hit in the neck and fell. It happened near the Akbat Jabbar refugee camp near Jericho in the occupied West Bank. Soldiers detained the wounded boy, accusing him of throwing rocks and pipe bombs before leaving him at an Israeli hospital. The Israeli hospital where he was treated claims they are owed more than $13,000 for treating an 8-year-old child with a gunshot wound from an Israeli assault rifle.
His father says the bill is so high, it will be impossible to pay. Palestinian officials told Al Jazeera that in situations like this, Israel deducts the funds directly from customs taxes that it collects on behalf of the Palestinian Authority.
Jude says he'll never ride a scooter again.
Poor kid. Și înainte să ziceți că gen asta e o publicație care face știri doar pe conflictul din Israel war in Gaza is the main topic, but aici avem și conflictul din Ucraina, pentru că e Ukraine. pentru că este o secțiune specială ținută și de ei și avem știri zilnice puse și pe topicul ăsta. They just focus more on Palestine because that's where the genocide is happening. There's no not yet a genocide happening in Ukraine as far as we know, but there is a war pentru că Ucraina luptă înapoi and it can get victories, whereas in Palestine there is no way they can do anything about that. Ce? Sweden announces $1.2 billion military aid for Ukraine as Blinken visits Moldova. Listen, am văzut și chestia că oamenii zic acum, why don't they just send some military aid to Palestine as well? To who? To kids? To women? To men that are not in the army? How? Are they gonna defend themselves against tanks? Against planes? Against how? They can't do anything. They can just run away and they don't even let them run away pentru că au blocade la graniță. They can't leave. They are stuck there. It's incredible. Impossible to imagine, almost. Ziua 820. What the fuck? It's been 800 days. Jesus. At least 3 killed in multiple Russian attacks on Kharkov, and Biden allowed Ukraine to hit Russian targets with US arms. Oh, look at that, Biden. Russia has Russia, and then we're gonna search for something that it's not really related to this. So eventual, I might actually end the stream sooner. În sensul că l-aș lăsa cât de cât scurt, so it's not like 3 hours long. Pentru că vreau să-l postez pe feed. I want it to be live there, and I want to post it on YouTube actually, so unedited, nothing. Pentru că, da, e genul ăla de content. Ukrainian air defense shot down. Okay, today morning the Russians... What? Stai. Cam pornim mai jos. The United States has eased the ban of Ukraine using US sunshine inside Russian territory to help it defend its northeastern Kharkov. So they like gave them weapons and were like, no, don't use the weapons on Russian territory. What? Russian forces have launched a barrage of missiles and drones across Ukraine that damaged energy infrastructure in 5 regions, according to Ukrainian officials. Ukraine's national grid operator, Ukrenergo. Okay, there are Ukrenergy, I see. Said on Saturday the attacks struck facilities in the eastern Donetsk and southeastern Zaporizhia and Dnipropetrovsk regions, as well as Kirovohrad and Ivano-Frankivsk regions in the center and west of the country, respectively. Today morning, the Russians launched another strike on Ukrainian energy facilities. Since March, it is already the 6th massive complex missile and drone attack against the civilian energy infrastructure. Ukrainian air defense shot down 35 of 53 Russian missiles and 46 of 47 Russian drones, the Air Force commander said. How many do they have, dude? The Defense Ministry of Russia, which launched a full-scale invasion of neighboring Ukraine in February 2022, later said on Saturday that it's forced that Russia had launched retaliatory strikes with high-precision weapons on Ukraine's energy facilities operating for its military-industrial complex, as well as depot, for weapon supplies from Western countries. Since March, Russia has stepped up its bombardments. Its bombardments of the Ukrainian power infrastructure, knocking out the bulk of the thermal and hydropower generation, causing blackouts and pushing electricity imports to records high. Ukraine's largest private energy generating company said its 2 thermal power plants had been hit and equipment seriously damaged. Regional officials reported that firefighters were extinguishing fires at several sites following the strikes. There were no immediate reports of casualties.
It's a big policy shift. The United States is now allowing Ukraine to use the weapons it's providing to attack targets on Russian soil. That's something it had banned since the war started. It's still imposed restrictions. US weapons can only be used to strike the other side of the border from the Kharkiv region in northeastern Ukraine.
Enjoy ziua copilului, by the way.
Over the past few weeks, Ukraine came to us and asked for the authorization to...
How about you go fuck yourself?
To use weapons that we're providing to defend against this aggression, including against Russian forces that are massing on the Russian side of the border and then attacking into Ukraine. That went right to the president, and as you've heard, he's approved the use of our weapons for that purpose. Going forward, we'll continue to do what we've been doing, which is, as necessary, adapt and adjust.
That adapting and adjusting has come after Russia bombarded Kharkiv for months with missiles and glide bombs launched from Russian territory. And when Russian troops crossed the border in May in a ground offensive that's captured more than 200 square kilometers of territory, President Zelensky told allies that Ukraine needed to be able to stop the attacks at source.
We can see the places where the arms are. Even from reconnaissance, you can get maps, satellite images. But we cannot respond, and I think that's unfair.
European allies like the UK, France, and now Germany have agreed, all allowing Ukraine to use their weapons to hit targets on Russian soil too, with varying degrees of restrictions. But the US is by far the country's biggest arms supplier. Ukraine needed it on board. But for President Biden, strikes on Russian territory using US weapons was for a long time a red line. He and his government worried about escalating the war and countries from the NATO military alliance getting dragged in. President Vladimir Putin, speaking on Tuesday before the announcement, warned precisely of that.
Representatives of NATO countries, especially in Europe, especially in small countries, they should be aware of what they're playing with. Before talking about striking Russian territory in general, this constant escalation can lead to serious consequences.
NATO Secretary General riposted this Friday.
Russia has escalated by invading another country, and Russia has escalated just last week by opening a new front where they are hitting Ukraine from inside Russia. And of course, to assume that Ukraine should not hit back is in no way reasonable, because Ukraine must be able to defend their territory.
Ukraine's allies will be aware they're walking a tightrope between supporting the country's right to defend itself and a much wider conflict. John Holman, Al Jazeera, Kyiv.
That's facts.
Authorities across Pakistan are clamping down on power theft, disconnecting offenders from the electric grid by some...
Oh my god. That's like my cable management. Holy shit. And then we're done with conflicts for today.
Children bearing the scars of war is a common sight in Gaza. But the scars that can't be seen.
Hold up, let me take a pic of this, because I find it absolutely incredible. Alright.
Scars that can't be seen are likely to have the most profound long-term effects.
My mother and father were killed. My head and legs were injured.
Outside the hospital in Deir al-Balah, Muhammad Ismail tries to raise his family's spirits. But he has a huge weight of responsibility on his shoulders. An Israeli airstrike hit the camp in Rafah this week. His brother was killed along with his wife, leaving the 4 daughters, the youngest only 2 months old, in his sole care.
We woke up to loud explosions. My other brother was killed along with his wife, leaving their daughters. They were all injured, but survived. I'm single, but now have 4 daughters to look after. I hope I can be as good as their late parents.
The family had been uprooted from Beit Lahia in northern Gaza, an area now in ruins, and sought shelter in Rafah, a so-called safe zone according to Israel. 3 weeks ago, the Israeli military launched an operation there, ignoring international warnings that this could lead to slaughter in an area overcrowded with displaced people. Condemnation turned to outrage when on Sunday, Israeli airstrikes sparked a fire in a camp also designated a safe zone. These charred remains all that's left. At least 45 people, mostly women and children, were killed. UN experts demanded accountability after stating harrowing images of destruction, displacement, and death have emerged from Rafah, including infants torn apart and people burned alive. It didn't end there. Another attack on a camp in western Rafah killed 21 people on Tuesday. Israel denies responsibility.
Denies.
Our tent was hit by a missile, and that's all I can recall. I was scared, my leg was injured, it was hurting too much.
Bro.
For now, Muhammad can only hug his family close and hope he can protect them like a father.
Gaza is a graveyard for Palestinian children and for those who survived, such as Dina and Fatima. They are experiencing psychological trauma, and every single time they hear the sound of the bombardment. Tariq Abazoum, Al Jazeera, Deir al-Balah, Palestine.
My days. Oh my days.
Jamila Nadir is shopping for...
No, not my face, bro. Okay, wait a minute. Alright. I can't even comprehend, dude. It's absolutely disgusting. Whatever is happening in Gaza is absolutely shit and terrifying, and I can't even comprehend what else is going on. Of course, the camera is, of course. I mean, whatever. Opresc asta. Aveam un plan, da, aveam un plan să fac ceva football manager stuff today, în care să stăm și să alegem o țară în care să intrăm ca un manager necunoscut, fără experiență, whatever, și după să ne interesăm de orașul respectiv în care e echipa, să vedem dacă au pagină de Instagram, să le dăm follow, să facem, nu știu, poate interacționăm cu ei, la echipe din astea care nu sunt cunoscute, la modul de, nu știu, echipe din Bangladesh, like, dai, știi, adică în Football Manager ai foarte multe chestii de genul. That's what I wanted to do. Voiam pur și simplu să intrăm, să ne uităm pe maps, să vedem unde suntem, unde manageriem, cum arată orașul, eventual să simulăm o chestie din asta în care mă duc cu salariul pe care îl primesc de la echipa aia, cât mi-o da dacă aș fi manager la ei, ce aș putea să-mi cumpăr acolo, cum am trăit acolo, când ne face programul de antrenoriat, cum mergem să antrenăm echipa, etc. Și ne cunoaștem cu jucătorii, să vedem cine sunt, să-i căutăm, să vedem dacă îi putem găsi și pe social media, etc. Poate interacționăm cu ei, whatever. Asta ar fi fost unul din planuri. Pentru a ne deschide cumva comunitatea și la ceva mai mare, chiar dacă suntem 25, it's like a lot, so thanks for the follows. Am ajuns la 25, jumate din goal has been achieved, so thank you very much. Ca să devin un Twitch affiliate? I don't even know, dacă e affiliate, nu, affiliate, că partner cred că e după. Trebuie 50, that's why the goal is 50, so thank you for that. I will start streaming maybe more. Next time, expect me to see expect to see more pe topicul ăsta, dacă o să se continue atât de grav cum continuă Israelul să facă genocidul ăsta. Și ne auzim la următorul stream, până la urmă. Am luat o pauză, that's why I've been away. Stuff has been happening. Fix când ce? Fix când am intrat. Da, păi nu, intră pe Discord după, don't worry. Stuff has been happening in my life as well. De asta am luat o pauză. Am zis să mă recalibrez, să mă pun în loc și să reușesc să îmi fac un schedule cât de cât interesant. În perioada 14-24 nu o să fie, cel puțin, deci în perioada aia clar nu o să fie niciun stream. Înainte o să încerc să mai fac streamuri preventive ca să le avem, să le punem, să le vedeți eventual if you want to follow that. Dar în perioada 14-24 I'll be away, I will not be home, I will not be able to stream, decât dacă fac un stream de pe telefon, but I don't think I'm gonna be able to do that, având în vedere roaming-ul și costul netului de afară. If technically it should be free and it should be the same tarif ca aici acasă, but maybe you know. Live pe Instagram. Da, No, ideea este că ne auzim la următorul episod. Thank you for watching, thank you for following și thanks for being aware and supporting whatever this is. Că efectiv what's happening în Gaza și în alte țări care efectiv au conflict și război. Gaza nu e război, Gaza e genocid. If somebody tells you that's a war, it's a lie. It's not a war. Palestina nu poate să lupte înapoi. Pur și simplu nu e conflict. It's a genocide. So go support them however you can. Donate to them. Au nevoie de apă, au nevoie de mâncare. They need to be able to get out of there. If they can't get out of there, then they're done for. They're just done for. And sadly, protestați if there are protests in your place. So thanks again for being here today și ne auzim, o să încerc să public videoclipul ăsta azi pe YouTube ca să fie și acolo. So choose and bye bye.